Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele ilezwe letu, nabantu balo, umasele ukulungu kwipondu letu, nkosi sikelele I Afrika, hina abantwayo bana, kukele inkukeli zayo, inike ukolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Please be seated. I see the Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that notwithstanding Rule 198, President is given to the subject for discussion. Thank you.
No objection to that? Agreed to. We will then start with the subject for discussion. Honourable
Point of order.
Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it is with concern that the Premier of the Western Cape is not present at this particular event. And we all know that we don't sit particularly often, and I think it impacts on the order and the dignity of this House, where despite us knowing that the Premier is supposed to be here, that she is not here.
Honourable Dugmore, I'm wanting you to finish your point. Is that your point of order?
Okay.
Thank you.
So my point of order is...
I've heard the point of order, thank you.
...is to ask whether you as a Deputy Speaker consider that this is a poor reflection on the House when the
Honourable
Premier is
Dugmore, I'm not
absent
going to
from
allow
such a
discussion on that. That's the membership, the attendance of members of the House. Order. The attendance of members of the House is under the control of the various Chief Whips, and I'm not going to make a ruling on that specific point. Honourable Windy.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That definitely was not a point of order, and this is not a platform to launch mayoral campaigns or any of those kind of things.
Thank you, Member. We will. Order. Order. We will now continue with the subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable Schaefer. Order. Let's allow the member to start.
Thank you.
Order. Allow
Thank
the
you,
member
Deputy
to start
Speaker.
the subject for discussion. Honourable Schaefer, you may start.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We are here today to debate a catastrophe, a drought that the ANC government fails to see, fails to acknowledge, and fails to declare a national disaster. Research shows that the El Niño conditions have caused the lowest recorded rainfall between October 2015 and January 2016 across the many regions of southern Africa in the past 35 years, with the hottest temperatures measured in the past 10 years. But what do we mean by drought, Speaker? The definition of drought relates to how much rain falls from an expected or normal to being insufficient in an area. Researchers state that we are currently at stage 4, a socioeconomic drought, which will have severe impact not only on the environment, but also on communities regarding access to food and water. During the 1991-92 drought, the last time South Africa experienced a severe drought, a government white paper on disaster management said that 49,000 agricultural jobs and 20,000 non-agricultural jobs were lost. Farmers in southern Africa are at the front line of this catastrophe and are arguably the worst affected. Not only is there financial ruin, but also a sense of hopelessness and a total loss of dignity. Agri-workers and farmers face one of the worst droughts in our recent history, and my thoughts and prayers go out to them as they face their daily struggle. On the West Coast and in the Karoo, we now see extreme drought affecting almost 400 settlements. In total, almost 1,600 settlements in the Western Cape are affected by this drought. The National Minister of Agriculture says there's no national disaster, but nationally, more than 28,000 settlements are suffering. A report presented in a joint portfolio committee meeting in the Department of Water and Sanitation recently has reported that almost 34 million South Africans are affected by moderate to extreme drought. As such, Speaker, it is an absolute shame when ministers in national government stubbornly refuse to declare South Africa's drought a national disaster. Minister Sokwane's only response has been an announcement of a measly 381 million for the entire country's need. 381 million. I think that's an absolute shame. Government's reaction is merely piecemeal here and there, with no clear, coordinated disaster alleviation plan. Organizations such as Agri-SA have reported that the current drought is of such great intensity that it is beyond the ambit of any farmer to mitigate despite his or her resource base. It is estimated that it will take at least 3 years for farmers to recover from this devastating drought. But Speaker, while the drought threatens farms with bankruptcy, it is estimated that the drought will result in the 11% food price increase before the end of 2016, which negatively affects the consumer. In March, it was reported in the media that already food prices had increased by 8% just 3 months into the calendar year. In particular, the cost of bread and maize is rising, and we know that this will hit the poorest of poor in our country first. Speaker, South Africa is facing a growing crisis. The risk of vulnerable communities not having financial means to access to food is growing. Organizations have said that the agricultural sector will lose up to 30% of its commercial farmers and 80% of small-scale farmers if government does not assist with funding mechanisms. I say we have a national crisis on our hands. It is expected that the demand for grain will be in excess of 7 million tons. Taking that into consideration, our harbours and railroad logistics will be under severe pressure. There are even doubts that South Africa will be able to move such a record quantity of grain inland, given the weak railway system and the poor road logistics. This could cause bottlenecks in supplies and product shortages from time to time, more traffic and increased stress on our road maintenance budgets. Speaker, we have a crisis. The Western Cape has requested 88 million from national government in drought relief. However, the Western Cape waits patiently for National Department of Agriculture to officially gazette the West Coast and Central Karoo, Witzenberg, Prince Albert and Oudtshoorn, and 2 district municipalities as drought disaster areas. And while it considers our request, farmers have very real obligations that cannot wait on any onerous government process. So while the ANC government is dragging its feet, the Western Cape has taken action. The DA-run Western Cape is truly committed to agriculture, and it is the backbone of our rural economy and employment in our province.
Honourable Jantji, order, member, please. Honourable Jantji, you are the next speaker on the list. Please wait your turn, please.
And because we understand that agriculture is tightly linked to our food system and our food security, emerging farmers are at most great risk, and so the Western Cape government is stepping in the interim where national government is failing. But, Speaker, without the additional assistance from national government, however, we do not have the resources to assist the larger farms, which are crucial to job creation, our food security, and to keeping food prices stable. Previously, it has taken 2 years before national government provided any emergency drought assistance. If they drag their feet much longer, this time around, we will face a full-blown disaster. Speaker, the drought has certainly highlighted the importance of the Western Cape to promote sustainable agri-practices. And with the increasing scarcity of water, farmers also cannot ignore sound conservation farming. And just next week, I know we will see the launch of Smart Agri, our first-time collaborative effort by the Western Cape Agriculture Department and Environmental Affairs and Development Planning to develop a climate change response framework and implementation plan. Smart Agri responds to the need for a practical and relevant climate change response plan, specifically for the agricultural sector of the Western Cape province. Speaker, the people of this province cannot wait any longer. Equally so, the people across South Africa affected by the drought cannot wait either. Enough is enough. We are a ticking time bomb. Give us our 88 million. Speaker, the DA calls on national government in accordance with the National Disaster Management Act to declare this drought a national disaster. I thank you.
Order. Honourable Jantji.
Honourable Deputy Speaker. let me just make the point so that we have this house deal with the facts. Let me, on the onset, share with you the National Development Plan Directive. And I'll get into its specifics. That water is a strategic resource critical for social and economic development. And there is a growing concern about the potential impact of water-related risk. South Africa ranks low, 128 out of 132 countries in Yale University's Environmental Performance Index. Now this is a fact. South Africa also ranks 148 out of 180 countries in terms of water availability per capita, according to the 2012 World Water Development Report. Since South Africa is already a water-scarce country, greater attention will have to be paid, and underline this, to its management and use. And this is what I'm going to come back to its management and use. The issue of management and use should be our theme today, and how this province and municipalities are governed. This is so because whilst water is increasingly becoming a scarce resource, demand for water is also increasing, leaving us with a big leadership and governance challenge. Water and energy remain the top global risk, and both the previous Pero and Mero in this house pointed this out. I was hoping somebody there, as she started to at least say something around that. Now, this DA government projects itself as a champion of the NDP, at least in their speaking manner and the PR exercise. But you will hear as we speak here that they have got nothing on the table to at least implement what they project as this Holy Bible. There is nothing on the table. Let us therefore locate this drought debate within this broad context so that we don't fall into the trap of centralization of serious issues like drought. Drought is one of the 32 hazards researched by our disaster team in the province, along with swine fever and others. The key issue is, having identified drought as part of the risk going forward, what is the actual plan to deal with its effects? We have had nothing until she sat down. And I'm hoping that at least 2 ministers that are coming will say something in this regard. Drought affects everybody, and we should not make the issue a political football, as the Democratic Alliance seeks to do. Drought is not manufactured at Lutulia House or at the union buildings. It should never be used for political point scoring. The starting point is that drought is as a result of climate change.
Order, don't you just want to, you're standing a little bit too far from your mic. We can't hear you properly.
I'll be closer.
Thank you.
They definitely will hear me now. That's for sure.
Just 1 second, Honourable Member.
Chair, can you start afresh so that we can?
Nice try,
I
but
would have
continue.
loved that. These points are worth repeating. The starting point is that drought is a result of climate change and global warming, which is a global phenomenon, and the current El Nino, which has confronted our part of the world. Climate change is a major challenge facing government everywhere in the globe. The DA raised a similar debate in the National Assembly in February. They were blaming national government, so we're not surprised when she did that. It's a DA template for not acting quickly enough, and that the current drought situation requires a declaration for a national disaster. However, the water levels in the country do not call for that. For an example, the Western Cape has the 4th highest water storage levels. Minister Bredel will say that nationally, and it is expected to increase with the upcoming rain season that is already underway. Furthermore, the areas currently affected, Central Karoo, Oudtshoorn, parts of Eden District, West Coast, require a targeted approach to deal with and ring fence and not give a broad brush approach to it. There are, however, provinces which have been adversely affected. These are Northwest, KZN, Free State, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga. Drought currently affects 173 of the 1,628 water supply schemes nationally, serving approximately 2.7 million households, or 18% of the total national population. Economic notes still at a positive water balance as at February this year, 53%. However, still significantly lower from this time last year, which was 81%. Basically, there is no need for a declaration of a national disaster. That's the point I'm putting up. These are the following government interventions so far. The Department of Water Affairs, Water and Sanitation has reprioritized an amount of 502 million in response to mitigation measures for the drought. She could not even say that. Over and above this, the grant-funded programs such as RBIC, MWIC, and ASIP have been refocused to mitigate drought-related water shortages. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries has allocated 381 million towards drought relief. The Land Bank has made available an amount of 400 million for concessional loans to commercial farmers affected by drought. Through the Agricultural Research Council, government has also introduced a drought-tolerant maize seed. That government has already allocated over $1 billion to help farmers since the declaration in 6 provinces. Some chose to ignore, as she did in front of us. DAF has developed and is implementing the mitigation and adaptation plan to take a long-term view to climate change, not shortcut measures. The National Disaster Management Center is leading a coordinated response to drought, working with various stakeholders, including this province. The National Joint Drought Coordination Committee has also established a task team to coordinate civil society involvement, because any disaster, you will never leave people because they are always going to be affected by it. There are many other interventions, specifically in the agriculture sector, to ensure that farmers continue to produce. And I'll leave that to my honorable member, Sharon Davids, to deal with. At a legislative level, Parliament is spearheading the introduction of a framework climate change bill, which will incorporate all relevant applicable provisions of the Paris Climate Agreement COP21. In the Western Cape, the national government is currently conducting a groundwater study in the Western Cape for the determination of potential yields, and this is in its advanced stages. You should have at least mentioned that, and I'm hoping RVA will that done. The City of Cape Town and the province of the Western Cape did not, under the current climate change challenge Save Water campaign as run in other provinces. Instead, the City of Cape Town just increased their rates. That's all they could do in response to the issue of drought. They want Treasury to give them 80 million for drought relief, but they themselves have not even invested half that amount in drought prevention projects in the province. So far, we have not had anything they are putting on the table. What infrastructural arrangements have been put in place for municipalities? I'm hoping Minister Bridgel will say that. But let me conclude by the following, which also comes from the NDP in terms of what is it that we need to do around issues of water management and its use. So I would like to put a challenge to the DA speakers that will follow me to tell us what they are currently doing in relation to water management and use in the province. Come back home. I further specifically invite them to tell us their plans on the following: effective administration of water resources, issue of reprioritization, the reduce of water demand, how they are doing on this, managing the agricultural use better, because the bulk of the water that we're using is used by agriculture. And they must also tell us what is the plan on the table for water reuse and issues of desalination. We'll sit down and listen to hear if they have a plan, but I can tell you now, I will not be disappointed knowing them.
Thank you, Member. The Honourable Order. The Honourable Christians.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. This is one thing that we cannot politicize. This is one thing we cannot politicize. And I want to emphasize, Speaker, because this is a serious problem we are facing. The total impact on animal and crop and horticultural production will be a reduction of 10%. 2017 harvests will also be affected as farmers may not have the water for post-harvest irrigation. Food prices will increase.
Just 1 second, member. Is there a question or a point of order, Honourable Silla?
It's a point of order.
I'm listening.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that the honourable member was not disrupted whilst he was speaking, but what becomes even more unacceptable is the point that he makes about the honourable member Christians. He says this one does not exist. You know,
Order.
it's not nice to refer to members like that. This is an honourable member. It's not apples or potatoes.
member.
It's an honourable member.
Order.
Honourable.
Order. Point is taken. We are all honourable members, and I'm not aware that the member did refer to him like that, but if he did say... Please continue.
Deputy Speaker, food prices will increase due to the wheat industry being most severely affected. Local wheat prices will be based on a poor dollar-rand exchange rate. Speaker, we're sitting with a serious crisis. If we look at the dam levels, 2015, steel price lower had 49%. It's at the moment 39%. Full freight was 44%. It's now 22%. Berg River was on 54%, it's now on 27%. We're sitting with a national crisis, Deputy Speaker, and we're sitting with a national crisis. And you know, Speaker, when we look at the comparison about the food prices, you are shocked when you go to the food prices that has been increased severely. Listen to this, Deputy Speaker. Potatoes that every citizen needs, the poor of poor need potatoes. In this current year, potatoes went up 8 times. Last year, it was 33 rand a bag. Today, it's 73 rand and 93 rand a bag. It's affecting the poor of the poor, and we have people here coming to play politics.
Order.
Deputy Speaker, hundreds of seasonal farm workers living in towns that have been severely affected by the drought. Farm workers. And we say sometimes we speak on behalf of farm workers, but when we need to help them, we don't help them. And that is a fact. Seasonal farm workers won't have the extra work in the agricultural space because of the reduction of agriculture. Speaker.
Order, member. Your time, unfortunately, has expired.
You must ask this member to keep quiet, Speaker.
Yes, I agree. Order. Before we continue, Honourable Janki, I've given you lots of latitude, too much, in fact. I've reached the end of my patience now with that. There's a vast difference between making a constructive interjection and simply making noise and commenting on every sentence made from the other side. We can't continue like this. Honourable Minister Bredell.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. It's sad that the Honourable Yankee started off his speech by saying that drought and the water situation is in our minds. That's precisely why the ANC can't solve any problem, because they think by not acknowledging a problem, it will disappear. And the only way we can tackle this problem is if all 3 spheres of government works together with the communities, with the NGOs, with water affairs. It's the only way. It's a joint effort that will solve this problem. Honourable Deputy Speaker, we are in a water-scarce country, and the Western Cape is an especially vulnerable water-dry province. The latest drought situation the country has been experiencing is not unique to South Africa. Many countries across the world, from India to Zimbabwe, at this very moment are in dire straits with regards to water. And this pressure is only set to increase into the future, given climate change and population growth projections. Urbanization will also put huge pressure on especially our cities, and especially the metro. In the Western Cape in 1996, there was an estimated 4 million people. Today, we are at around 6.2 million in this province, and our prediction shows that the province's population will grow up to an estimated 32% over the next 25 years. as one example, Cape Town can expect another 1 million people to settle themselves here over the coming years. We need to plan for that and we need to be ready for that, otherwise we won't be able to accommodate the pressures. Agbare Speaker, landwyd is ons damme vandag gemiddeld 55% vol. Landwyd is ons damme vandag gemiddeld 55% vol, teenoor verlede jaar se sowat 80%. In die Wes-Kaap is ons hoofdamme vir drinkwater vandag 30% vol. Verlede jaar dieselfde tyd was dit 58% vol. Dit is 'n aanduiding van hoe ernstig die saak is. Die data en die voorspellings is belangrik omrede die uitdagings met water in die toekoms net gaan vererger indien daar nie behoorlik beplan word nie. Die groot probleem is hoewel die bevolkingsgroei so toeneem teenoor die reënvalpatrone wat in dieselfde stadium afneem. Inteendeel, daar word voorspel dat klimaatsverandering teen 2050 reeds daartoe kan lei dat reënval in die Wes-Kaap sal afneem met tot 30%. So aan die een kant verwag ons bevolkingsgroei van 32% en aan die ander kant voorspel ons reënval wat gaan afneem met so wat 30%. Dis duidelik dat die aanbod van water wat reeds onder druk is, gaan net nie kan byhou by die aanvraag nie. Agbare Deputy Speaker, water is nie net belangrik om oorlewingsredes nie. Dit is 'n kernbelangrike deel van ekonomiese groei. Sonder voldoende water word ekonomiese groei beperk, wat weer beteken die stryd teen armoede, die stryd teen ongelykheid, die stryd teen werkloosheid word moeiliker. Daar is ook die impak van watertekorte op gesondheid. Sonder betroubare waterbronne is mense geneig om vuil water te gebruik en dit kan tot grootskaalse siektes lei. In die Vrystaat is daar byvoorbeeld op die oomblik in Roewil area 'n groot siektebedreiging met tot 20.000 mense wat al maande sonder water sit. Nog 'n voorbeeld van die groot impak van water is met betrekking tot riool. Ons rioolstelsel in Suid-Afrika werk grootliks met vars water en sonder voldoende water kan die noodsaaklike funksie oor die enorme uitdagings ontaard in geweldige uitdagings in die toekoms. Honourable Deputy Speaker, a recent report by the World Bank warns that climate change will have a massive impact on the world's economies. The World Bank says shortages of water could strip off about 6% of the country's GDP by 2050. That would put South Africa's economic growth at roughly -6%. Die Wêreldbank sê stede reg oor die wêreld se waterhulpbronne kan verminder met tot 2/3 teen 2050. Dit het weer 'n reuse impak op ons kosproduksie en die huishoudelike inkomste, met families wat al hoe meer sal moet betaal vir water, soos wat dit meer skaars raak. Watertekorte sal die mees kwesbare onder ons, die armes, gevolglik die swaarste tref. So wat kan ons doen, of wat kan gedoen word om die probleem aan te spreek? Eerstens is meer doeltreffende gebruik van water kernbelangrik. Een groot probleem in baie plekke is die vermorsing van water. In sommige plekke gaan enorme hoeveelhede vars water verlore, te wyte aan stukkende pype en slegte bestuur. Goeie bestuursbeleide en implementasie kan dus 'n groot impak hê op watertekorte of om watertekorte aan te spreek. Nog 'n area waar verandering moet plaasvind, is hoe die omgewing behandel word. Die besoedeling van waterhulpbronne en omgewingsdegradasie oor die algemeen moet aangespreek word. As ons nie ons voedingsbronne oppas nie, kan ons nie watersekuriteit verwag nie. In die verband is ek trots op ons program vir die rehabilitasie van ons waterstelsels. Die Wes-Kaapse Bergrivier verbeteringsskema vorder fliks ten spyte van begrotingstekorte. Tot op datum is meer as 100.000 plante suksesvol gekultiveer wat gebruik word vir rehabilitasie van die rivierbanke wat skoongemaak word van uitheemse plante. Op voedselvlak Op munisipale vlak help ons munisipaliteite met waterbesparingsbewustheid inisiatiewe en die instel van beperkings. Ons het projekte reg oor die provinsie aan die gang waar ons ou infrastruktuur vervang om lekkasies te vermy en te voorkom. So het ons byvoorbeeld onlangs miljoene rande in die Kannaland munisipaliteit spandeer waar waterinfrastruktuur opgradeer is. Ons in die Weskaap het tot nou toe plaaslike rampsgebiede verklaar in Oudtshoorn, Prins Albert, Witzenburg, Sentraal Karoo, die Weskus munisipaliteite. Die situasie word deurlopend gemonitor en sal uitgebrei word indien nodig. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape's plan for water is a proactive approach that requires all spheres of government and the public to become involved in the cooperative manner to ensure that water is managed properly. Other long-term options to address projected shortfalls that are always being discussed include desalination of seawater, water reuse, and the deep aquifer water source that need to be investigated and implemented. We need to be very careful when we debate this because each of these will also have a negative environmental impact. In the Western Cape, we believe if you want to improve people's lives, you need a proper plan and that need to be implemented properly and timeously. When it comes to water, this is even more important. Ongoing engagements with national and local government and disaster management entities remains vital to successfully manage the situation going forward. In this regard, we are also excited for the potential of the raising of the Klein Willem Dam wall. In addition, Honourable Speaker, you will be pleased to know that the Provincial Drought Management Plan has been drafted in collaboration with various stakeholders across this province. The plan was developed in line with the disaster management key performance indicators as stipulated in the Provincial Disaster Management Framework. Highlights from this plan include a drought management task team that has already been established and oversees the drought disaster risk assessments. The plan further outlines several drought risk reduction strategies, including the application of good agricultural practices across the province. The following is also addressed in the draft Western Cape Drought Plan: early warning systems and measures, data collection tools, measures, and educational and awareness initiatives. In terms of the response and recovery, the Drought Action Plan identifies the possible management actions that should be implemented at certain drought trigger points. That is a brief and outline of the situation and what is being done at present. It is clearly going to take innovation and hard work to make sure there is a sustainable future for everyone. I thank you.
Honourable Casella.
Deputy Speaker, honourable ministers, honourable members, and the people of the Western Cape. The Democratic Alliance received an unwavering and a sterling mandate to govern the Western Cape on the 7th of May 2014. This against the wishes of the prophets of doom and gloom, whose desire for the people of this province is nothing but to divide them on the basis of race, class, gender, and background. It is not by accident, Deputy Speaker, that 2 years later we remain resolute and undoubtedly confident that on the 3rd of August, in the local government election that year, will receive a clear, refreshing, and resounding mandate from the voters of this province. We will win the majority of the municipalities in the Western Cape. I want to congratulate the following people: the speakers of this province, the mayors of this province, and the councillors, municipal managers, and executive directors, and area managers.
Order. Honourable Casella, I've given you some latitude for introduction, but it's a rather long introduction before we get to water. This debate is about water. Get to the debate, please.
I'm getting this, Deputy Speaker.
Okay.
This is a political conversation. May I then carry on where I started? You have disturbed me now, honourable members. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. when we talk about water, we must keep in mind that it is a very sensitive, essential service to all people. A recent survey indicates that 100% of the people of this province receive clean water, as contrary to other provinces where the ANC is in charge. This is in line with the mission of the Western Cape government and, of course, the plan to keep governing this province and keep making progress. The Western Cape government, in its mission statement, says we will promote freedom, opportunity for all the people of this province through delivering clean, efficient, cost-effective, transparent, and responsive public administration, among others, close quote. Furthermore, the province is the champion in driving water-saving awareness programs through the Department of Local Government. I'm not going to belabor the points that have been made by the Minister of Local Government, a very competent minister, unlike these useless ministers in the other provinces. Let me further state, Deputy Speaker, that we appreciate the program that has been launched by the National Minister of Water Affairs, the War on Leaks. 7,000 artisans will be trained nationally, and in the province we are getting 680 of them. And the challenge with this, which we don't appreciate, the national minister did not consult with the province on which municipalities to target. For instance, Honorable Kyangi, through you, Deputy Speaker, is saying here, Central Karoo is a problem, but your minister doesn't see it as a problem. Your minister sees these municipalities as a problem. She sees Canaland, which we agree. She sees Pito, I know what they want there. She sees Lanesbeck, we know what they want there. She sees Cedarbeck. We know what they want in these areas. But we will make sure that we clap you there. Because we are coming, the blue machine is non-stop. Let me further say, Deputy Speaker, the whole question of water, Deputy Speaker, must be addressed, especially on the issues of negligence and wastage by both industrialists, by both the industrial and household users. We have on Tuesday this week, we had a presentation by the Department of Local Government. And I must say that the issue came out quite strongly that those who owe the municipalities the most are the industrial and households. Of more than 90 days debts that are owed to municipalities, 65% of that is from households and industrials, which is firms and big companies. Now we need to address this because nationally, the amount is even much bigger. In the province, this talks to 6.4 billion rands that we need to talk to. And it's a very serious matter that we need to address. When Honorable Kyangi said we're not answering questions, let me just say, Deputy Speaker, through you, well, when this debate was put forward, it was against the backdrop that national government is neglecting its mandate. In 2015, with the bill that we dealt with here in this parliament, which was referred by the NCOP, the National Disaster Management Bill, and some of the issues around the bill intends to amend Section 43 of the Disaster Management Act of 2002. I can tell you, Deputy Speaker, that what it says is that municipalities must have now the responsibility to establish disaster management centers without giving money to the kind of mandate they are giving. 75% of the burden of this budget will come from municipalities and only 25% will come from National Treasury. And we find that very, very disturbing. It is against the Constitution, and also it is an unfunded mandate in terms of Schedule 4, Part B of Schedule 5 of the Constitution. And those are the kind of issues that we need to address. No unfunded mandate must be given to municipalities. If you want a municipality to do 1, 2, and 3, fund them. That's why in this province we opposed this unconstitutional bill. Let me further take you, Deputy Speaker, and this House to the issue of the entire scope of services that we have done, that we have provided in municipalities over and above the question of water.
Order, member. Unfortunately, that will have to stand over. Your time has expired.
Thank you very much. The ANC can see what we're doing in this
Honourable
program.
Davids.
I'm just laughing. I think Beverly, Honourable Member Saifa Beverly, you maybe were supposed to wait for after the 18th of May because according to the program, we are getting reports next week on the drought from the department. So you are rushing yourself. The ongoing drought affects the most vulnerable and poor communities, mainly in the rural farming areas. The farm workers and dwellers are constantly threatened with short time, layoffs, retrenchment, and evictions. The price increase of basic goods and other services such as bread, maize meal, meat, milk, vegetables, and fruit. On the other hand, the fuel prices have gone up, including municipal services such as water rates and other related services. The poor communities are not exempted from paying for these price hikes. Food production and food security depend on the ability of agricultural and farming sectors to produce enough foodstuff, and critical to that is the availability of water as the natural resource amongst others. Farmers, agribusinesses, and food producers are therefore central and interrelated in the value chain and supply management system in the food production market. Western Cape still suffers from the aftermath of 2006 price fixing of bread by major bread producers like Pioneer and them, who connived to reduce competition through their involvement in a so-called bread cartel. This had had a far-reaching impact on the availability of basic foodstuff, namely bread, cereal, and maize meal. Mr. Nosy Peterson of Bahusa have accused the farmers of wanting to use the drought as an excuse to shed jobs on farms. He further stated that government should only support those farmers who have shown commitment to secure jobs of their respective employees during these challenging times. He further maintained that farmers experience drought once a while, but farm workers are in drought throughout their working lives because of low wages and poor and bad working conditions. He pleaded for the protection of the workers' jobs. As the ANC, we support the call to protect farm workers' rights and improve working conditions and employment security of farm workers. Food prices have done up incredibly owing to the drought. Statistics South Africa has revealed that food costs has gone up by 9.8% year on year, with vegetables 18.7%, oils and fats 18.1%, bread and cereals 13.3%, and sugar and desserts 11.7% increased the most. What concerns the ANC the most is the welfare of and lack thereof of the impoverishment rural communities, who are the worst affected than anyone else by this drought. What we hear from this DA-led government is the plea on behalf of the commercial farmers, who is your constituencies, by the way, so you are busy campaigning here, who are predominantly white farmers, to declare Western Cape as a disaster area. And in our standing committee, we said to the department, why are they not advising the commercial farmers to take out security on their farms? They're not doing that. You are saying that the poor people love handouts, but I think the commercial farmers now want the handouts. We hear very little about the emerging farmers and to be assisted during this drought. The ANC is aware of the fact that many of them, if not all, do not have appropriate equipment and enough resources to mitigate the effects of the drought. What measures have been put in place to caution devastated situations and mitigate their plight? In November 2015, the Minister of Water and Sanitation, Comrade Nomvula, issued briefing notes on the status of drought in South Africa. It was reported that the Western Cape dams were running at 70% on average, down from 89% the previous year. It was also mentioned that the most affected areas in the is the West Coast region. It was acknowledged and noted that other regions such as Central Karoo and Southern Cape, which were partly affected, had already taken proactive measures to mitigate the impact of the drought through groundwater exploration and reuse of return flows. Furthermore, the department proposed some drought response measures, which include strict implementation of drought operating rules at all dams, including restriction, increase the water mix, especially groundwater utilization, reduce operational risk by proper infrastructure operations and maintenance with associated skills development, implementation of water conservation and demand management programs, emerging interventions by tanking and climate research, as well as service authority municipalities. The question that must be asked is whether the Western Cape government has taken a keen interest to implement these measures to mitigate the negative impact of drought. The blame-sake attitude of the DA-led administration is devious and not assisting the good efforts by our national government to mitigate the negative effects of this devastating drought. Like the Honourable that stood up and put the blue T-shirts forth in support of the drought. Your blue T-shirts, your blue wave, you spoke more about the blue wave. You're not concerned about the issues of the farm workers and the people that is affected by the drought. You come here and you make a political speech, but out there you want to say to the people you are speaking on behalf of them in Parliament. And it's not supported what is happening on the ground. In January 2016, Mr. Colin Dinner of Western Cape Disaster Management confirmed that the agricultural sector was hard hit in areas of Central Karoo and West Coast, and that relief was provided in those regions as disaster zones. He further stated that together with the National Disaster Management Centre, a very thorough assessment and classification was done, and a decision was taken not to declare a provincial disaster, but rather concentrate to those disaster zones in those affected areas, especially West Coast, Central Karoo, and Southern Cape. He further noted that seemingly the two departments is not speaking to one another. Agriculture is not speaking to local government. He further noted that despite a major shortfall of rainfall, the province still had a very strong groundwater system that would help alleviate the pressure over the rest of the summer. He stated that the prognosis was that Western Cape would survive this period. That is your disaster manager, the provincial one. His ascensions do two things. They dispel the myth that says the national government does not care about the Western Cape and the people, and dispels the myth that says the Western Cape province is entirely in its drought. Who is fooling who? Is the officials lying to us, or are we lying to ourselves? In conclusion, the national government has awarded funds through the Division of Revenue Bill to provinces, including the Western Cape, namely Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program, Ilima Sima Projects Grants, and Land Care Program Grant, Poverty Relief and Infrastructure Development. These funds would have enabled the Western Cape government to assist to a certain extent the emerging farmers. Impoverished communities heavily affected. This includes 120 million investment through National Job Funds projects, which was recently launched and is to benefit 24 black fruit producers, both in the Western and Eastern Cape province. Our national government is committed to move South Africa forward. Therefore, the DA government must not claim easy victories. And I just want to make an example of claiming, they are saying the one thing and doing another. Let us go to Philippi. They want to build houses now on the agricultural land of which the groundwater is very strong there. It means you want to make sure you're speaking about drought, but meantime, you are busy destroying the underground water in Philippi. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Minister Windy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, first of all, can I thank the Honourable Schaefer for putting this debate onto the table. And, you know, we sometimes get stuck in this space that this debate is an agricultural issue. And yes, it was an agricultural issue, as that was the first impact, or where the first impact is felt when we have drought. But the big problem here, we're moving from that initial impact, which hits agriculture to start with, into a space that's going to affect every single person in this province. It's moving from an agricultural debate to a people debate, to a resource debate, to an impact on the poorest of the poor debate, to a food security debate. That's where it's moving to. And the biggest problem that we are suffering in South Africa at the moment is the lack of leadership around dealing with this issue as it moves from an agricultural problem to a problem facing every single person in this country, a problem facing everyone in sub-Saharan Africa. So you'll see that the World Bank has upped the number of affected people in sub-Saharan Africa from 29 million people to 50 million people are going to be affected directly by this drought. And listening to this debate, it brought it home again to me. In listening mainly to the discussion that came out of the ANC's benches today, that they are still stuck in the wrong space. And it comes back to the lack of leadership in this space. So there's no leadership in the agricultural space in dealing with this issue. There's no leadership in understanding the impact of this drought, not immediately right now, but what it's going to mean for the next 2 and 3 years. This drought that we've just suffered last year. If we do not get rain this winter in this province, it's going to affect us for 6 and 7 years. At the moment, we've got an effect from 2 to 3 years, even if we get rain. And I've listened to some of the numbers, and maybe perhaps on the leadership space. That is the biggest problem that we face in South Africa, is the lack of leadership from the ANC, whose job it has been. They were put in power by the people of this province to do exactly that, to lead us in these kind of spaces, to lead us in this agricultural drought space, but to lead us actually as the impact hits the people of this country. We've got exactly the same problem, whether it's in the tourism space around visas. I heard people mentioning visas here. Lack of leadership and commitment at the ANC level again. The same thing from a presidency space, where there's no leadership, and that's why this country is facing a downgrade again, because there's no leadership. Or where there is leadership, it is crazy leadership who do things like 5 finance ministers that have effect on every single person in this house's pension fund. Do you know how much your pension fund lost because of that? Your pension fund, each one of you, let alone the people out there, because of that stupid decision. So the problem is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the problem is the lack of leadership. So we listened to some of the numbers that were put out there around dam levels. And let me explain to you what actually is happening in our system. So if you have a look at some of our dams, let's have a look at the Steenbras Dam in 2014 sitting at 81%. In 2015, it sat at 64%. And today it's sitting at 59%. Voelvlei was sitting at 59%, it then went to 50%, and it is now sitting at 18%. Let's look at Brandvlei. Brandvlei is the same thing. All of these are the same thing. 49%. The next year, Brandvlei went to 36%, and today we're sitting with 15.4% in the Brandvlei Dam. We're sitting at Clan William at 9.47% as we speak right now in April. We're looking at 6.3% at Floriskraal Dam. 6.3%. And you know what happens with those kind of levels if we do not get winter rains? They will not even get to half of what the level of those dams were at the start of this agricultural year and this year, and that's going to affect not the farms, that's going to affect every single person in this province, because our towns are going to run out of water. Our towns are going to run out of water. We heard talk about the effect on food prices. Let's have a look at the latest food price effect if we look at year-on-year change. And I mean, here's a graph. If you just have to look at this graph, and the red line on this graph shows you what potato prices have done in January and February alone. From last year at between 3,000 and 3,500 rand a ton, starting in January at 4,500 a tonne and going almost to 6,000 a tonne now. That's what's happening because of this drought. And because of this drought, food prices now sitting in maize meal at 65% up year on year. Bread price 17% up year on year, potatoes 22% up year on year. And this has a direct effect on every single person in this country. So the drought might be seen and discussed in this space generally as an agricultural issue, but it has moved way beyond that. It is a leadership issue, and it is an issue that this country needs to embrace with much more vigor. And especially, we need our national ministers to embrace it with much more vigor, because there is zero leadership at the moment from that space. And that's why I too wrote down when the Honourable Jantjie said, drought is only in your mind. I see the Honourable Bredell wrote down exactly the same thing. Drought is only in your mind. Well, quite frankly, he then shows exactly where the ANC is in this drought space. Exactly. Then we'll move to something that someone's shouting at me across from the other side of the floor, who obviously doesn't have a clue about what this is about either. Because she first of all spoke and brought race into it initially. But let's talk about that, because in November, and we still haven't had action in this province from the national government to help us with this drought. In this province, we still not had that action. But in November last year, it was my department who made the initial 11 million rand available. Who was that made available for? Honourable Member, who? You were in this house when we announced it. Now she's ignoring the debate. It was made for emerging farmers. It was made for the new black farmers who just got into farming in this province. It was for them so that they could survive, because we put taxpayers' money into putting them on the land. It was for them so that they could keep their farm workers on the farms. And then while we were still waiting for further leadership and funding coming from a national level, then what happened? We again in this province stood up, stepped in to stand and make a difference for those specific people again. Where were you when I was traveling the province, going to see those farms and going to see what difference it made? Where were you? You were sitting in your comfortable office down here while someone else was writing your speeches. You weren't getting to grips with the actual problem, and you're not even to grips with that problem, let alone where we're moving to as a high-risk space in South Africa, where this drought has got massive implication for all of the people, and specifically for the poorest of the poor in this province. But the Honourable Jantjie says, no, it's not an issue. It is all in your minds. It is all in your minds. There is a massive problem of confusion, of not understanding the complexity of this issue whatsoever from the ANC at a national level, and from the ANC at this provincial level, even less of an understanding of the magnitude of this specific issue. But it was very interesting that when the Honourable Jantjie stood up, he stood up and he initiated the discussion by quoting from the National Development Plan. Now, thank goodness there's one person in the ANC who actually talks about the National Development Plan. Only one. No one else. Only one. And that, again, on top of this confusion that's in this agricultural space and this drought space when there's no leadership, they are throwing other issues onto the table from a policy point of view, which is really crippling.
Order, member, just 1 second. Honourable Davids, please. No running commentary. Honourable Magaka. Order. Minister Madikizela and Mr. Magaka. Allow the member, please, to continue.
Which is really crippling the basis of our food security and our food production in this country. And this drought is just exacerbating it. And that policy mindless space is where we've got a nexus between land reform and agriculture, who really do not understand their mandate. Between the two of them, there are crisscrossing mandates. That member spoke the other day in a debate in this House about how are we going to get black people in this province to own land and farm the land that they own. When this very department, who is supposed to be dealing with this, the Department of Land Reform, guess what they did? And I wonder if how many of these members were in Beaufort West on Tuesday? Were you there? Were you there? Where were you when the Department of Land Reform, this department, Deputy Speaker...
Order. Order. Order, honourable member at the back there. Please continue, Minister.
When the Department of Land Reform, whose job it is to make sure that those black farmers get land, I mean, their policy doesn't allow them to own it, they can only rent it. But that department is supposed to be spending money in this space. Get what they did in the Land Reform Department, built a gym in Beaufort West. So at least the people who would like land can go and exercise. But they can't get any land. We spend the money on the wrong things, we give wrong policy positions, we are totally clueless from a leadership space in trying to deal with this issue and all of the issues that our country is facing.
Order.
And that is why...
Order. There's too much noise in the House. Honourable Diana, you can't shout at the Minister, at the members across the floor at will. Order. Minister, please continue.
And that is why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is why we are in such a crisis in this country. Do you know that we have now dropped from the top economy in Africa? We then dropped to the second when Nigeria passed us, and we have just been passed again by Egypt. This is under the watch of the President Zuma. We have dropped to number 3 behind Egypt.
Minister, just 1 second. Honourable Dagwal. Order.
I would like to ask whether the Honourable Member Windy, who has never before refused to take a question, will take a question.
Minister Windy, are you prepared to take a question? The Minister is prepared.
Thank you.
Order.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker, I would like to ask the Honourable Member whether he can indicate to us how many people live in Nigeria, and secondly, how many people live in Egypt, and whether it is not logical economics that bigger countries with bigger populations and rising youth should not, in terms of the African Renaissance, actually grow their economies.
Order. Minister Windy, you're just a little bit off the topic, but you mentioned that for the first time, so you can,
Thank you.
if you want to.
That is a really good question. And I hope this honourable member is going to put this in the mayoral campaign, because the understanding of the economy, straight there and then. First of all, the devaluation of the rand. He doesn't understand that part. The crazy decisions by President Zuma that takes our rand to pathetic status where we start to get junk bond status. So first of all, it is lack of political leadership, what I've been talking about all along. Secondly, his logic where he starts off by saying if more people in the country, surely the economy will be bigger. So if we've got a house of 5 people in it, the economy in that house is going to be better off than a house with 2 people in it. He really does not understand. And before he hits the campaign trail, if it's going to be a campaign trail for a mayor of a big city with a massive budget, he better start doing some economics 101 before he even starts on that trail.
Order. Minister, get back to the topic, please. Your time has almost expired.
So he gets back to how many people are in the household in Nigeria. I mean, I've heard all sorts of excuses, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on why we slipped from 1 to 2 on the number of people in Nigeria. They said, let's have a look at the electricity usage. I mean, everybody's thinking of every single excuse under the book to try and justify it. We need good political leadership in this country if we want to change things.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Order. That concludes the debate on this subject. We'll now proceed to interpellations as printed on the question paper. Interpellation number 1, I believe, stand over. Interpellation 2, the Honourable Schaefer to Minister Windy. I see Minister Windy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. And thank you very much to the Honourable Schaefer for this question. The tourism numbers, first of all, in South Africa, quarter 2, 2015, in South Africa, we experienced a 9.5% decline in arrivals. This is 2.226 million visitors, as opposed to quarter 2, 2014, which was 2.015 million arrivals over the same period as opposed to 2015. So a decrease of 9.5% quarter on quarter. However, in the Western Cape, we saw the opposite. First of all, in March, at our airport numbers, this is the time of the year where really domestic tourism starts to pick up again post the holiday season, although in the main tourism season, and we saw there that over 1 million passengers came through the airport in March, which shows you that our domestic programs, specifically around our events, so from the Jazz Festival to the marathons, to the cycling events, to what's happening in our convention centres and our new convention centre that's just opened, that it's definitely having an impact. For the period November 2015 to February 2016, compared to the period, the same period, November to February 14-15, there has been an origin and destination passenger growth of 7%. That was from 6.96258 or 696,258 to 742,621 passengers through the Cape Town International Airport. There's been a 60% increase in O&D passengers coming through Qatar. That went from 34,951 to 55,772. And again, there was an increase of O&D passengers from Turkey. That was a 53% increase. That went from 36,000 to 55,000. We also saw out of the European markets, including the United Kingdom, which accounted for 45% of the arrivals, at 335,274 passengers during that period. Again, also looking at future bookings, which means that our work in seasonality is really pulling through. The USA passenger forward booking numbers were up by 23% for the period April 2016 to August 2016, compared to the same period, April 2015 to August 2015. And that was up from 10,844 to 13,301 passengers. Also, the spend, 22 nights or more, were up by 16%. And four-person bookings were up by 25%. And then, of course, the China bookings, they were up by 52%, which was really good to see. So some of the interventions where we actually are allowing tour operators to work with bookings and visa applications in China now have really started to reverse some of those negatives that came from the visa regulations. So I think, quite frankly, for us in this region, the national numbers, although being down, our regional numbers were up.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. The Honourable Schaefer.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I think it's really encouraging to see that the tourism sector is showing such a good recovery and is very resilient to some of the challenges that they've been facing since 2014. And we're really seeing a comeback after certain legislation has been lifted or really relaxed. And I think particularly, in which I must note, is the encouraging the number of visitors that have come to Robben Island has increased by 24.7%, because we saw a steady decline of visitors to Robben Island over a period of years, and it is encouraging to see, and certainly as a committee we'll be taking and having a look at their new management partners, Kucha Development Corporation, in terms of their managing of that island, because it's a very important part not only of South Africa's cultural history, but obviously also for the Western Cape. And Speaker, but I think really to go back to the visa regulations, and we know that we've been struggling since 2014, and that particularly under Project Khaleesa, tourism as a focused strategic economic growth point, that it was impacting on jobs. We know that 1 in 12 jobs is a tourism job, and that Minister Gaba's stubbornness has cost the economy hundreds of millions. So we are very pleased with the numbers, but can you imagine if those records on terms of legislation on visa regulations were lifted, what the possible numbers could have been? But I'll talk to that after I've heard my colleague in the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Schaefer. Honourable Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. There is no doubt that there was a decline in our tourism numbers in 2015 and that 2016 has seen an increase. The important question to ask is why there was a decline and what informs the increase. The Democratic Alliance would like us to believe that the decline is because of the visa regulations, but the factual data at our disposal prove that this is not the truth. When we look at 1st December 2015 to 7 January 2016, there was a notable increase in travel movement compared to 2014 and 2015. In fact, the numbers show that when compared to 2013, there was a 5.3% increase in tourism numbers in 2015 when the visa regulations were introduced, as opposed to the previous years before the introduction of the regulation. Furthermore, the contentious issues which was raised regarding the regulations was the under-bridge childbirth certificates, and the DA was dancing up and down saying that this regulation will drop out tourism numbers. Surprise, surprise. The numbers for child travel were actually the highest in December 2015 than they have been before the visa regulations were introduced, proving once more that the regulations of the underbridge childbirth certificate did not impact the tourism numbers. Furthermore, there have been no fundamental amendments to the underbridge certificate requirements, and the 2016 numbers showed a peak in our tourism numbers. What does this mean? It means that the visa regulations have actually had nothing to do with the slow tourism numbers. The real truth is that the Department of Tourism failed to sell South Africa in 2015 and instead told lies to the media that it is because of the visa regulations, deliberately overstating the role of the visa regulations. The improvement in our numbers prove that it has never been about the visa regulations. The DA has been insensitive to the issue of child safety and national security and created problems where there is none. Wendy went on a ramp and told us thousands of jobs and billions would be lost where Honourable Member MEC Wendy went on a ramping page.
Just finish off, your time's expired.
Yes, and told us of thousands of jobs and billions would be lost with these regulations. He must tell us where.
Thank you, Member.
Where MEC, because the numbers for the hospitality industry have actually increased.
Order. Honourable Schaefer.
Deputy Speaker, I find it amazing that my colleague over on the other side of the House is making such rash statements and saying that we're lying, because actually I have quotes here from Minister Hanekom himself and spoken to Minister Hanekom with regards to this. And to be honest, and I quote here, he has said that he takes a firm stance against the implementation of unabridged birth certificates. He has come out publicly against the visa regulations. And although in his real frustration, which he reported a few days ago, he said, unfortunately, he just can't seem to get the unabridged birth certificates to shift as quickly as he would like. But he's just waiting because it's a matter of time, because it was a national cabinet decision to actually lift the onerous visa regulations, and whether that it's a matter of political and ego wills, he says the changes will happen. And I will quite happily invite Minister Hanekom to come and say that, because he makes it quite public in all his reports and his media statements. And then also, Speaker, just to say again, I think that that specific sectors of the tourism market has been impacted by visa regulations, and that is that South Africa has always been seen as a family-orientated destination, and that is where we're finding that visa regulations is negatively impacting on all those people that bring their families out here to experience our beautiful countryside and beaches and all our family destinations here, and that is where we're finding it's a problem. So while we welcome the increased numbers in China, and that's a direct correlation, as Minister Hanekom says here, and I have his budget speech, that once Chinese visa, that they didn't have to go and appear in person for a visa in China, that the travel agent could actually apply for that visa instead. The numbers have absolutely quadrupled, and he reckons that China will be the fastest growing sector and visitors to this country for this year. We'll wait to see those numbers next year. And also, just Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister whether he's had any information or research on a direct correlation between visa regulations for the tourism market and child trafficking. There cannot be a correlation. We have acts that speak to child trafficking and SAP's enforcement on that atrocious space that happens in our country and across the world. But the question really is, does tourism visa regulations actually have an impact?
Thank you, Member. Your time has expired. Honourable Windy, Minister Windy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. There's been quite a lot put on the table here. I think, first of all, it's quite unbelievable what was said by the Honourable Davids. I'm actually going to ask Hansard for a copy of that speech and send it to Mike Mabuyakulu, who probably fumes the most. He actually fumes more about the visa regulations than Derek Hanekom. I think I'm going to send him a copy because that'll just drive him off the edge. There is a massive problem around the visa issues, and we heard now that it had made no difference to child or family travel. And I think the Honourable Member must actually ask a speechwriter who's getting these stats from her, because it's had a direct impact on international travel, not on local travel. So probably they're getting confused and they don't know the difference between domestic tourism and international tourism. But this is a massive issue, and it really is a massive issue. And primarily it's a massive issue because it wasn't about our core previous kind of main markets. It was about the new markets. It was about Africa. It was about China. It was about India. Those are the biggest markets that were being hit. Those are our BRICS partners. They're the ones of where we saw the biggest drop-off and the biggest effect of these visa regulations on our system, and that's what our numbers were looking at. The Honourable Member, Chair of the Standing Committee, she said that she was encouraged by the Robben Island numbers, and I too was very encouraged by the Robben Island numbers. And then she mentioned Kucha, and I thought I had to just say one thing about that. And this shows you again. Now, I've done some research on the Kucha entity. It actually performs quite well. It was set up to run an industrial development zone. If you go and have a look at what they do today, it's an Eastern Cape entity, like ours, our new one that we've just passed the legislation for the IDZ. It's an Eastern Cape entity that answers to the legislature in the Eastern Cape. But they build school fences in KZN, they build clinics in the Free State, they are now doing our harbours in the Western Cape. It's a public works implementing agency, which actually says to us that National Public Works, they don't know what they're doing, so they're giving it to an entity to deliver their services. But you know what my problem is? They might be excellent at delivering our harbours at Robben Island and whatever. The big problem is, if they had to build a failure, if they had to build a clinic in this province and the clinic fell over and 1,000 people were killed, who would have the oversight of that clinic? The Eastern Cape Legislature. And that's the main problem that I have in this space.
Minister, unfortunately your time has expired. Your 2-minute slot is done.
Thank you.
We then proceed to questions on the question paper. First question again, Honourable Windy, Mr. Nkosela to ask Minister Windy.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker, I'm just trying to find it. No, maybe that isn't.
If Minister Marais is ready with the second one, we can continue that way. Minister Marais. Mr. Inana to Minister Marais.
Thank you, Honourable Inana, for the question. The Gugulethu 7 monument was unveiled by the City of Cape Town on Human Rights Day, the 21st of March 2005. Although I am aware of the vandalism of the Gugulethu 7 monument, this was never officially brought to my attention, as it occurred about 7-8 years ago before I took office. The current situation is that the granite structures are still intact, while captions, photographs and biographical information of each structure are vandalized and removed. The vandalism of historic sites is a challenge for all spheres of government. The reason for vandalizing monuments is mainly for stripping the monuments of valuable metals such as bronze and copper. Heritage Western Cape will engage the City of Cape Town, who is the owner of the Gugulethu 7 monument, in order for them to consider replacing the captions with material that is of little financial value. Furthermore, Heritage Western Cape will engage the City of Cape Town to consider putting in place a management plan for its monuments. And then the second part of the question, in terms of the National Heritage Resources Act number 25 of 1999, the maintenance and repair of monuments and the land on which they stand are the responsibility of the owner and the landowner respectively. At this moment, the overall management responsibility of the Gugulethu 7 monument lies with the City of Cape Town. However, it is important that when any sphere of government and its entities have erected monuments, communities take ownership of them, protect them and use them as cornerstones of social inclusion. As a provincial government, we also encourage communities to use public monuments as a stimulus for economic opportunities, for example, heritage tourism. Given that Gugulethu 7 occupies such historical and important role in the healing process and in building the inclusive Western Cape, Heritage Western Cape will consider declaring this site a provincial heritage site. I thank you.
Is there follow-up? Honourable Inona.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Yeah, I accepted the response that you give, especially of saying that the Western Cape Province should encourage the community to use such monuments as a source of tourism. But I want to ask Minister, what is it that can be done or your department can do in order to protect the environment where those monuments are? Because as they are exposed, they are not fenced, they are not protected. Whoever wants to pass, whoever wants to steal those granite stones, it's easy for them because there is no protection. And for several times they have been rebuilt, but what is lacking is that there is no protection, and the value of those people that died there, it needs therefore to be recognized. Can the protection of that site be one of the priorities that can be done by the department?
Minister.
As I've said, this is a mainly responsibility of the city of Cape Town. But given that Gugulethu 7 occupies such historic and important role, as I've said already, in building the inclusive Western Cape, the Heritage Western Cape will consider declaring this site as a provincial heritage site, and I think we must engage the community to let them know what the value of these monuments, and I think that's the only way that we can get there in cooperation by protecting these monuments.
Thank you. We will then see another follow-up. Honourable Chacha.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. My question would to the MEC. I would want to know, is there any plan from the department in relation to the public participation in relation to people knowing exactly what are these 7 people that are part of this monument, of the monument? Is there any plan in terms of public participation, in terms of the community? Is there any plan from the department?
Thank you, Member. I think the question is clear. Minister Murray.
It's a new question, but if we will proclaim it as a provincial heritage site, we will have public participation.
Thank you. We then go back to the first question. Honourable Windy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I apologise to you in the House for not being ready for that question. It was the answer was hiding somewhere between Tashil RSA Limited, Intersite Investments, Visas, and the Guptas and the Duduzani Zuma companies, but I've managed to find it, and no, nothing to do with the Mayor. And can I say to the Honourable Mkasela that thank you for the question. Last year, the Premier announced that the Western Cape government would embark on an energy game changer to stabilise electricity supply following the inability of Eskom to ensure this. Eskom's failures had highly negative impact on the economy and investment, and we have stepped in to mitigate these effects. The energy security game changer was partnered with 6 municipalities in the Western Cape and is prioritising its initial work with these municipalities. The municipalities were chosen on the basis of their size, as their aggregated electricity consumption represents the majority of consumption in the Western Cape. The 6 municipalities are the City of Cape Town, Saldanha Bay, Drakenstein, Stellenbosch, Mossel Bay and George. And the Western Cape government, together with Green Cape, has worked intensively with these municipalities to ensure that they put in place the necessary bylaw, policy and tariff that will enable rooftop solar photovoltaic installations. The main resource champion of these municipalities has been the electrical services manager, who is supported by the relevant municipal manager and chief financial officer as policies and tariffs need to be developed and implemented. And the Western Cape Government and Green Cape have also liaised with local municipalities with a view to putting the necessary legal framework in place. If these engagements, in these engagements, the primary point of contact has been the electrical services manager.
Thank you. We then proceed to question number 3. Honourable Inana to Minister Plato. Minister Plato.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much, and also to the Honourable Member for the question. The Department of Community Safety has prioritised the following policing precincts in terms of its mandate as hotspot, crime hotspot areas. There's a number of them outside of the metropolitan area. Paul East, Saldanha Bay, Verliesdorp, Worcester, Beaufort West, Toos River, Oudtshoorn. And I need to say for other categories, other towns might fit in if we're talking about certain other criminal activities in some other areas as well. In the metro, we're looking at Khayelitsha, Masipumalele, Nyanga, Gugulethu, Mitchells Plain, Kraaifontein, Menenberg, Delft, Philippi East, and that includes Hanover Park, also Bishop Leyvers, Humfeleni, Atlantis, Cape Town Central. And here we're talking about, Deputy Chair, about crimes such as murder, drug-related crimes, attempted murder, and assault, and so forth. Thank you very much.
Is there no follow-ups? Mr. Honourable Inana.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Minister, I want to check with you whether those priorities on those identified hotspots, have they yielded the results of reducing the crime? And what nature of the priorities that assisted in terms of fighting the crimes?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We're working very closely with the police. You must understand the first entity in the country to fight crime or any form of crime is the South African Police Services. We unfortunately do not have any investigative powers and operational policing powers, but through our programs, through our projects, we try to intervene as far as possible. We do receive also requests from the police to zoom into an area with our programs and projects, and that we do on a week-to-week basis. There's results, from time to time some good results, but we even go back to an area more than once due to the criminal nature of a specific area. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Lekker, was the follow-up?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Having noted that Masiphumelele has been identified as one of the hotspots, is there any preventative measures that has been put by the department in ensuring that SAPS is supported in fighting crime in Masiphumelele?
Speaker, as I have said, programs and projects, the South African Police Services did put recently, a couple of weeks ago, a satellite police station in Masiphumelele to try its best to curb crimes. Currently, they are looking for a piece of land to build a fully fledged police station. But once again, what we can provide, as I've stated before, programs, projects, yes, we're doing that even in Masiphumelele.
Thank you. No further? Is there a follow-up question?
Yes, Speaker.
Please, you can continue.
Speaker, the Minister has not actually responded as to whether is there any form of support rendered to SAPS by his department. That was my question. Thank you.
I don't think the member have listened to what I've said. I answered that question already. Again, we do not investigate. We have no operational control over the police. That's why I'm saying programs and projects alongside the police, it's exactly what we are doing. Thank you. Open your ears, then you will know.
Order, order. We then proceed to the following question. Order, Honourable Lekker. Next question, question number 4. Order. Minister Madikizela.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Whether the National Minister of Human Settlements has indicated that free housing to all is not sustainable. Yes. No. The current minister, on the 21st of October 2014, the National Minister of Human Settlements, Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu, indicated that government free housing projects were not sustainable. She further indicated that, I quote, "Our intention in giving free houses was to right the wrongs of the past and make sure that we can give our people dignity. And that group of people is not the people below the age of 40. You, the young people, have lost nothing to apartheid." I'm quoting what the minister said. Just bear with me. "You, the young people, have lost nothing to apartheid. None of you are ever going to get a free house." Now, you can go to www.news24.com to get to get that statement. But to further qualify what the minister was saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because I do not want to give the impression here that there are different views between myself and the minister, because I've also been saying this. Now, to contextualize this, we were very disturbed, and I think all of us, to see the skewed pattern of housing allocation, where you still have very old people, 60, 70, in fact, there are people up to 100 years, we are still waiting. When you have younger people in their 20s receiving houses from the state. And then the minister said, we need to prioritize older people first. And so this is the context of the statement that she made. Now, the second part of the question, what are the plans, whether my department has any strategic and innovative plans to respond to this statement. And yes, I think we have. That is why, if you look at our strategic goals in the province, we have 3 strategic goals. The first one is to make sure that those people who are living under those bad conditions, whether they are over 40 or under 40, we've got to make sure that informal settlements are improved and upgraded by making sure that there's access road when there are fires, there's water, there's sanitation, there's electricity. That is what we are doing. Because we believe that way before you get a house, we must improve your living condition. That's the first thing. The second thing, in line with that statement by the minister, we are now addressing the skewed pattern of housing allocation, where we are saying, let us start with older people, disabled people, when we allocate houses. And thirdly, we are now dealing with the challenges that exist in the affordable market so that we can really strike the balance. Because if we build more and more free houses and not balance it with those people who deserve houses as well, who are earning just above the threshold, we are running the risk of creating poverty traps for municipalities. So those are strategic interventions that we have made in response to the statement by the minister.
Thank you, Minister. Is there a follow-up question?
Yes. I just want to ask the minister that the national minister said you should interfere with the projects that are even already there, even prior that particular statement she uttered. She said you must interfere with projects that were already there and already in process being implemented, and then you change the beneficiaries on those bases. Did you say that?
Thank you, Minister. Your response?
I don't know how to respond to this question, honestly, because it's not very clear. I don't understand what do you mean by interfering.
Can
Order,
I explain,
please.
Speaker?
Honourable Mgaka, I don't think it is your place to tell the minister to sit down. I will manage the proceedings. You may ask your second question.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. I just want to ask, sir, did the national minister give you an authority to interfere in projects, including changing beneficiaries on projects that were already in place being implemented, even prior the statement was made?
Thank you.
Let me first make the member understand that I don't need to be instructed by a minister to do anything. I understand my responsibility as outlined in the
Order.
Constitution. I understand my responsibility as clearly stipulated in the Constitution. The issue of the existing projects, let me then perhaps explain that. The existing projects that were there even before the statement was made simply said to me, which was a right thing to do, that if those projects are under construction, whether they were approved before or after the statement, but the allocation has not been made yet, it was an opportunity for me to do the right thing. In fact, I've been saying this way before the minister even made this statement, that we cannot continue with a situation where we prioritize younger people over older people. In fact, I made the same statement as early as 2012. So when the minister made that statement, she was actually saying something I've already said. So it's not an interference, it's an intervention to make sure that the right thing is done, the mistakes are corrected. So it is within my powers as the responsible person in this province for human settlements to make sure that if certain things are not done correctly, I then intervene, not interfere, intervene and make sure that they are done correctly.
Sorry, Honourable Mgaka, I see Member Museko for a follow-up. Sorry, and then we'll have the next one.
Yes. Minister, I just want to find out, considering this, the problem of sustainability versus the fiscal allocation landscape as it is now, is there strategic and innovative plans that the department has in place as we speak now? Is it going to be relieved, or there can be a challenge in implementing those strategies that we have in the department?
Thank you, Chairperson. I've partly touched on that because we have about 16 programs within the Housing Code. That simply means that looking at the challenge, you can then identify programs that will assist you to deal with the challenges, taking into cognizance the limited resources that you have. So the critical question that I had to answer was to which program that can assist us as government to deal with the plight of the people and make sure that we get to as many people as possible. And that is why I spoke about UISP, which is the upgrading of informal settlements program. Because if you use that program to deal with the plight of the people there, you are able to assist as many people as possible. Because if your focus is going to only be on one program where you build top structures, you run the risk. We spoke about the rate of population growth here. You run the risk of assisting very few people year in and year out.
Order, please, Minister. Would you care to take your seat? Is it a...
Because of the two ministers here who are on another cruise altogether.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable
They are
Dianki.
not here.
Ministers Windy and Grant, a request has been made. If I could ask you to manage your conversation. Minister Grant.
Speaker, may I address you?
Yes, you may.
That was a frivolous interjection. The racket coming from him is double our quiet conversation in the bench.
Thank you. Honourable Yankee, I trust I've addressed the situation. Can we get quiet on both sides of the House, please? Thank you. Minister, you may proceed. Order.
So
that's irrelevant.
So what we are saying here, just to respond directly to the chairperson in terms of the strategic intervention, is that one, we must upgrade informal settlements, make sure that people are waiting under improved conditions, because current conditions in many areas, are really appalling. That's the first thing. Secondly, is to make sure that we correct, the skewed pattern in terms of housing allocation, prioritize the right people. That's a second intervention. But thirdly, is to address the plight of those people who earn too much to qualify for a free house, but too little to qualify for a bond from the bank. So those are three strategic interventions that we have made. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Mkaka.
Yes.
This is the final question.
No, it's a second.
The final follow-up question.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. Honourable MEC Bonkos Matikize, is it true that you're not only interfering, I think that's a relevant word, it's not intervening, interfering with projects that are already, who are in the planning process and so on, but on the project, for example, the project in Side B, the project in Side B had beneficiaries prior. Those beneficiaries were cutting across the age. Now, is it correct, therefore, to make that interference at that moment when already a project had its own beneficiaries of a PHP, for example?
Thank you.
Okay, let me try and slowly explain this to the member. The processes of a PHP project start with the identification of beneficiaries, workshopping them, putting together a business plan, forwarding that business plan as an application to the department. Now, the fact that you have a business plan with the names on it of the people who might be 18 and 19 does not necessarily mean we are compelled as government to prioritize those people. Doesn't mean that at all. So we can then make sure, look at that business plan, look at the composition or the profile of it, and look at the individuals that are there and take a decision. Let me make an example. If you have a beneficiary business plan of 200 people, and out of those 200 people, 50 are younger than 40, you can then say, we are going to approve this project with 150 beneficiaries. Because what needs to be understood here is that we look at this globally, not just at a specific area. Because you cannot give a house to a 21-year-old in Side B when there's a 70-year-old in Wallasdene waiting for a house. But that's what I said. No, if you don't have kids, you don't qualify for a house at all. You don't qualify for a house at all if you don't have kids. Well, you are not a priority.
Order, please. There's Honourable Mkaka. Okay. The Minister is responding to your question. Thank you. You may proceed, Minister. You cannot engage the Minister while he is responding. Thank you.
I was 25, by the way, when I got my first child. Now, that's the point that many people do not understand. The fact that you have kids. If you have kids and you are 21 and there's a 50-year-old who's got kids as well, the priority is that 50-year-old because that person has been waiting far longer than you. That's the point that we are making here. So the issue is not whether you qualify. the issue is not whether you qualify or not. The issue is whether you are a priority in terms of the criteria that we are using or not. That's a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Order, please, members. We now move to question number 5, and that's to Minister Windy.
Very much, Madam Speaker. Perhaps before I answer that, I don't know if I'm allowed to abuse the space, but there was a question here about that the person 50-year-old's a DA member. The reason is that most people in this province are DA. So thank you to the Honourable Schaefer for this question. That's how you get into power. Thank you very much for this question. First of all, the interventions through the fund are targeted not at the citrus industry. This was for the fruit industry, but in actual fact it's within the fruit industry, and they are the deciduous fruit industry such as pome, apples and pears, and stone fruit, apricots, peaches, nectarines and plums. So that's where the main focus is. At this stage, we project that 550 new jobs would be created through this intervention. 24 smallholder groups have been identified to benefit from this fund, targeted at 100% black-owned entities, 4 of which are based in the Eastern Cape. The planned interventions will assist in the commercialization of these entities through increased production and access to formal markets, both domestic and export. And in addition, these farmers will receive continuous mentorship through their, from their commercial counterparts, those are the partners in this deal, and through the department's commodity approach. And then B, the Jobs Fund is aimed at the commercialization of smallholder farmers, mainly beneficiaries of land reform programs. The majority of these are targeted at our rural and previously disadvantaged communities, and this is where employment opportunities will be created. The targeted projects are in 3 fruit-producing districts of the Western Cape, namely the Overberg, the Cape Winelands, and the Eden District.
Thank you, Minister. Any follow-up questions? Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to know what is the contribution from the Western Cape Department in this 120 million? Thank you.
So obviously what happens when, I'm not sure if the Honourable Member knows how a Jobs Fund application how it happens, and it's got to be a partnership. So the partnership in this case is commercial farmers through Hortgrow, which is the membership body. Our department was involved in the submission through to National Treasury, and it forms part of our bigger program for which we have invested 259 million rand. So it's part of that program where we help emerging farmers. We will obviously be involved from a support basis like extension offices and any area around commercialization. So that will link through to our funded program through Kulisa, as well as linked into Westgrow, where we have an agricultural desk, because it's about creating enabling environment for these farmers to get market access both locally and internationally.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions?
Speaker, my specific question, what is the amount that the department have contributed towards the 120 million? Because the commercial farmers have contributed 20 million. The national department have contributed an amount. What was the contribution from the Western Cape Department in this deal?
Thank you. Minister.
So the initial 120 million is exactly as the Honourable Member has said. So our contribution has been in kind in the production of the actual application. We were involved in 6 applications, I think, to the Jobs Fund. And our support now comes as the second round. And it is critical that that support is part of the decision-making process that National Treasury wants to see.
Thank you. Any further follow-up questions? Honourable Davids.
Just a yes or no, through you, Speaker, to the MSC. Was the department involved from the beginning of this deal, or did they just come on board? Thank you.
Minister.
Are you saying was the department, or the department was involved from the beginning of the scheme? Yes.
Thank you. Order, please. And if there are no further follow-up questions, I'll move to question 6. And the question is to Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Garden Route Primary experienced strong growth in demand, in particular for places in the foundation phase in 2016. WCED has allocated 4 mobile classrooms to the school to meet this growth in demand. The contractor was handed the site on the 13th of April 2016, is currently completing the installation of the mobile classrooms, which will be ready for use in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions? I see the Honourable Ace.
Thank you, Speaker. May I ask the MEC, and thanks for the answer, is the mobile classrooms, the 4 that you referred to, is that the final solution? And do you plan to put up a second school in the Asla area?
We are experiencing extreme growth in that entire area. At the moment, we are looking at using mobiles that have been at Pakamisani Primary School. There is a school identified. There was a UAMP meeting on the 20th of April, and Mossel Bay was identified for a new primary school in Asla Park, but I haven't got dates yet as to when it's going to be built.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, yes, will there be additional educators as well, seeing that there will be 4 additional mobile classrooms that I believe is not sufficient, but would you look at additional educators?
As the member well knows, we are under incredible budgetary constraints as a result of the nationally negotiated wage increases as well as the financial situation. We are battling to keep up with the teachers that we need at the moment, so I can't guarantee that there will be at this point. We are doing everything possible to try and cut funding everywhere we can to provide extra teachers everywhere we need them, but we don't have enough everywhere.
Third question.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, to ask the MEC that additional allocation from national, that 50 million rand, I'm sure you're aware of that you received the last month or so. What proportion will go to this specific primary school, and how would you utilize that for Garden Route Primary?
Madam Speaker, that's an entirely new question. I can get you the answer. I don't have the proportion with me, whether it's going to that particular school or not. I know it was used for invoices which we had from last financial year already that we had actually overspent.
No further questions. Honourable Oliphant, this is the final follow-up.
Yeah, no, Madam Speaker, given the response now by the MEC to this question, is the approach across the province that where we've got this challenge, is it that the solution from the department will be mobile classes? Because I believe that we are now having a constraint, not only at this primary, but it cuts across the whole province. So is the approach therefore that to alleviate this problem, will it be mobile classrooms besides the other planned schools already?
Madam Speaker, we have, as the member knows, a detailed UAMP, which is the 5-year plan for building schools across the province. We are building new schools all the time. We handed over about another 3 already so far this year. So it's not the only solution, but it certainly is a solution. And where we have, large numbers of learners at a school, we will use mobile classrooms where we have to, because we simply don't have enough money to build a new school everywhere we go. As you know, we had an additional 25,000 learners coming into the province this year, and we simply don't have money to build 25 new schools per year, nor do we have the ability to build that many schools in 1 year in any case.
Thank you. We now move to question 7. Minister of Human Settlements.
Why the housing subsidy to George municipality has been reduced, I do need to perhaps correct the question. The housing subsidy remained the same across the country. It was not the housing subsidy that was reduced. It was the indicative figure in terms of the allocation that was reduced. And the main reason for that, Madam Speaker, is that, as it normally the case in various projects, the Tembalot Informal Settlement Upgrade project was delayed at the procurement stage. And one of the reasons why it was delayed, through you, Madam Speaker, to Honourable Member Ace, is that the municipality had different plans in terms of how to build these houses in Tembalot, but the community had other plans. For example, I was there just, I think, 3 weeks ago, where I had a meeting with the beneficiaries who are insisting that they prefer PHP instead of contractor build. So it's one of the reasons why the project was then delayed. And as it is normally the case, if there are delays, in a specific municipality or specific project, we then use the money elsewhere. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Honourable Ace.
Thank you, Speaker. Thanks, MEC. The George municipality in official documents indicated that there was a delay in the approval by your department, and the delay was really with the PAC, that committee. Can you just tell us who's the PAC and why was the delay in the approval for George municipality?
Thank you very much. The PAC is the project approval committee in my department. But I think, as I said, this problem, through you, Madam Speaker, of people not happy with the option that was taken, because as you know, Honourable Member Ace, that when we build houses, we use different approaches. For example, we follow the procurement process, we appoint the contractor, or we use the provision in the policy as well. I spoke about PHP, where beneficiaries themselves have a choice in terms of the service provider that they want to build for. So, because there was this unhappiness, they ended up even writing a letter to me, the beneficiaries. And after receiving that letter, obviously we could not proceed and go ahead, because in any case, even if we went ahead, appointed the contractor, we were going to face massive resistance from the community, which is normally the case. Now, where we are now, because I strongly believe that, especially if people are asking for something that is within the policy of human settlement, we've got to accede to that request. Where we are now, I think I'll be going to George on the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken, to go and make sure that within the policy, we agree that those people who prefer PHP are actually given what they want.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Ace.
Speaker, clearly, MEC, when there's a cut from 60 million to 20 million, it can't just be because of the beneficiaries. I mean, this is not the first time we're reinventing the wheel. Why the big cut of 40 million rand to George's community, and how are we going to catch up on that?
Perhaps I need to also clarify this, Madam Speaker, that municipalities do not get housing allocation. Let me, because again, there seems to be a confusion here. The housing or human settlements is a concurrent function between national and provincial government, not municipalities. No municipality account for housing, by the way. When we allocate funding, we give indicative figures. It does not mean that you are entitled to that money. Based on the business plans that we receive from municipalities, we give indicative figures that in this financial year, this is what you are going to get. Now, if there are delays and there are problems, we can easily shift that money to a project that is moving. The first choice is within the municipality. If there's no project that is moving, we shift it to another municipality. But by the way, George municipality, in fact, if you look at their track record, they have actually received more than the allocation that was due to them, or indicative figure that was due to them, because of this as well. There were projects in other municipalities that were not moving. We ended up taking money to George. So it's a normal practice in the human settlement space, where as Department of Human Settlement, at this level, we have to make sure that the money is spent within the province. The reason why 40 million, Honourable Member PH, is because this is where the biggest chunk of this money was going to be spent, in Themba-Lethu. Themba-Lethu is one of the catalytic projects that were identified jointly by the national and provincial government, where we will be building about 15,000 houses. And this portion of houses that you are talking about form part of that catalytic project. So that is why it's such a big chunk of money, because the intention was to spend it there. How we're going to catch up? I mean, again, at the beginning of the financial year, because Themba-Lethu is a catalytic project, that simply means that more money, especially in all catalytic projects, will be dedicated to areas like Thembalethu. So we haven't lost that money per se, but as I said, the fact that they are losing it now, we know that it's an issue in George, but some municipalities lost it in the past and George was, benefited. So it's a normal practice.
Thank you. It's a final follow-up.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, anything saying? Thank you. Are you now convinced that the project is on track again? And when can we see some progress in terms of the project being implemented?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as I said, Honourable Member, before the end of this month, I'm just not sure, and I think I'll share that information with you. I think on the 23rd, I'll be meeting with the municipality, with the beneficiaries, because at the last meeting, we took a resolution to say that beneficiaries must get what they want. If they want PHP, they must get that because it's part of our policy. So what they have done now is to consolidate the list of beneficiaries, and at the next meeting is to verify that list and reallocate the funding so that we continue with the project. So I'm very much confident that we are on track. We will start that project very soon.
Thank you, Minister. That is the end of questions for oral reply. We now move to member statements. There will be an opportunity for member statements. I see the DA.
Thank you, Speaker. The recent NCOP taking Parliament to the people follow-up visit to Eden District was a good example of good governance in the Western Cape. Reports presented by the leaders of the delegation, all ANC members, indicated that good progress has been made by the National Department, Provincial Department and the local government. The chairperson of the NCOP, Honourable Modise, described the NCOP follow-up visit to Eden District Municipality as satisfactory progress in all spheres. The focus were not on the people, the focus were on the people, not on the political parties, was her exact words. The Western Cape government will ensure that the outstanding issues that were raised and concerns that were raised will be dealt with. Speaker, as this is clear and a clear example of how other provinces can show good governance and good leadership, this was a clear demonstration thereof. I take this opportunity to thank the staff of the NCOP as well as the staff of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament in the part they played in taking Parliament to the people a positive experience. I thank you.
Thank you, Member Joseph. I see the ANC.
Once again, and I'm sorry that the Chief Whip is not here, Speaker, because I don't like to talk when he's not. Once again, the DA Chief Whip was found wanting in terms of interpreting laws and regulations, and in this case, the interpretation of what the powers and functions of the Public Accounts Committee is. The bullying tactics employed and fear instilled in members of this House to defy the Chief Whip has once again raised its unpleasant consequences. In spite of what the standing rules regarding committees say, the Chief Whip on the day came running to intervene in a decision that Scopa wanted to take, which was quite within its mandate. There are, in the standing rules, 3 sections that spell out what Scopa, as a committee, is entitled to do. The one is in Chapter 8 of the standing rules that deals with spelling out which committees this Parliament has. And specifically, Rule 69 under Chapter 8 gives the Public Accounts Committee legitimacy. The second one is Rule 87, which spells out the general rules of committees. And the final one, which spells out the specific rules that apply to public accounts as a committee, is Chapter 3 and specifically Rule 98. Its composition is determined by Chapter 2 and Rule 74. And by the way, Speaker, the heading of Rule 74 as it stands is also incorrect, because the heading refers to the number of committees as opposed to the number of members to a committee. So I hope that the relevant committee will deal with that amendment. These specific rules were what we as the ANC members used to support the decision to have a prevalent matter of Scottsdene School brought onto the agenda by summoning the Minister of Transport and Public Works and his department to come and explain. Remember, while his incorrect advice and intervention caused a fracas in the meeting, which ended up in us having to vote on the matter. So today, we are back on that topic because at our SCOPA meeting yesterday, we, as the ANC, were vindicated by means of a letter from the acting secretary confirming that we as the ANC were indeed correct. And in our interpretation of the rules that govern the Public Accounts Committee.
Honourable Pierwinkle, you have 2 minutes allocated for statements. You've run out of time.
Can I just finish, Chairperson? We have continuously reminded the backbenchers of the DA that their purpose in this House by means of questions and statements and inputs is an oversight role, not one of praise singing and being stifled by the Chief Whip because they want to create opportunities for Cabinet to grandstand about things they already know.
Thank you, Honourable Pierwinkle. I now see the DA.
Speaker, the House notes that today, South Africa, alongside with other countries in the world, celebrate International Nurses Day under the theme, Nurses, a Force for Change, Improving Health Systems, Resilience. Today, we pay tribute to the commitment and dedication shown by nurses in the Western Cape and elsewhere towards the realization of a health system that delivers quality care to all patients. Further, we also acknowledge that health systems are only as strong as the people in them, and people can only perform at their best in a safe and secure environment. We further acknowledge that crime and violence are a societal issue which threatens the effective functioning of the health system and thereby all people in the Western Cape. It is therefore important that the House welcomes the appointment of the Deputy Provincial Commissioner for the South African Police Service, Major General Patekile, to the Western Cape Provincial Health Council to assist the department with the fight against crime at our health facilities. We believe that by working together, not only with SAPS, but with other departments, civil society, and most importantly, communities, we will be able to meet the threat that often presents itself at our door, thus to ensure that our nurses and other health workers are protected and are able to function in a safe and secure environment. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of the EFF, I see the DA.
In tabling the budget of the South African Police Service, Police Minister Nhleko gave a commitment to better policing, and particularly visible policing. He spoke about preventing crime and back to basics. One of the 3 pillars of his approach is to enhance police visibility and, quote, more officers in uniform. This would be welcome because the Western Cape has a severe shortage of police officers. We have vacancies in the thousands, and 85% of our stations are understaffed. But, Madam Speaker, the Minister said one thing and budgeted for another. Crime is a priority in our country and province. The population is growing, and therefore the number of police officers should grow as well. We would have hoped to see additional allocations of 10 or 20,000 more officers nationwide. But if we look at the budget between now and 2019, South Africa will get a net total of 20 more officers. Not 20,000, 20. 20. There will be no increase for the next 3 years in the number of crime intelligence officers and no increase for the next 3 years in the number of visible police officers. This is a serious oversight in how the national police budget has been allocated. 20 additional posts over 3 years for our country is not enough. Our communities are not safe. They are not safe enough for the national government not to increase the number of police officers. We owe it to the men and women in blue who put their lives on the line each day for us and who, despite difficult circumstances, fight on to make our communities safer. We owe it to them to ask the Minister and his department to go back to the drawing board, to reprioritise the police budget and make a better plan for our police. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I want to note that today that the ANC would like to ensure that this DA-led government continue to obstruct the fight against crime and refuse to testify against gangsters like the Cape Town Barbara Councillor Russ has done, and that councillors like Willie Jafta pleaded for a softer sentence for convicted murderers of a dangerous gang in the Western Cape High. They make it difficult for SAPS and the criminal justice system to secure
Order.
proper sentences for hardened criminals that terrorizes our community. And therefore, as the African National Congress, we are here today calling that the Standing Committee on Community Safety have a full briefing with the Western Cape Education Department manager on its program on safer schools and show us the directives to deal with, amongst other things, dangerous weapons, searching, access and control, crime reduction plans and reaction, and other emergencies at school. And that the Community Safety Department reports on measures to assist schools and the implementations of policies like the integrated gang strategy to limit the opportunities for youth at risk, and calls on MEC Den Plateau to desist from befriending hardened criminals that elevate them to the role models to youth prone to follow into the footsteps of gang lords and drug dealers in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the ACDP.
Speaker, the ACDP in the Western Cape wants to voice its concern after receiving complaints about the requirements of certain tender processes at Groote Schuur Hospital. It is very clear that the recent tender requirements set out by the Department of Health for Groote Schuur Hospital clearly discriminate against religious businesses. Businesses who were invited to bid for the opportunity to deliver food, such as fresh bread and poultry, for a one-year period. However, one of the requirements are that they must all produce halal certificates and all their businesses must be halal. The Groote Schuur tender meeting, which was scheduled to take place on Wednesday, the 20th of April 2016, was subsequently cancelled due to numerous businesses protesting against these requirements. The businesses believe that the tender requirements is discriminatory in nature against other religions. The ACDP in the Western Cape expresses concern and believes that this prejudice requirements for what clearly is a public tender is unacceptable. The tender requirements show lack of religious tolerance and businesses that are not selling halal certified products, nor operate for an halal business. We believe that the business should openly have the right to tender irrespective of whether the products is halal or not. Furthermore, the ACDP in the West Cape feels that all the businesses should equally compete for a public tender. We urge the Minister to review the tender requirements so that everyone can benefit. I thank you.
Thank you. Members, if I may, when I saw the ANC, I went straight to the ACDP without recognizing the DA. So if I can just self-correct, I'd like to see the DA, after which I'll see the ANC, and then we'll finish with the DA. Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, last weekend we celebrated Mother's Day, and I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all mothers a belated Mother's Day. I am honoured to have been raised by a single mother and grandmother. Both played a pivotal role in shaping the man I have become, and for that I'm eternally grateful. 'n huis is niks sonder 'n moeder nie. Despite the many challenges the women face in our community, mothers has always played a leading role in raising and educating children. Their resilience was also shown when they were at the forefront at the liberation struggle and at the forefront of our lives. Indeed, as the saying goes, watinta umfazi, watinta umbogoto. I would therefore like to celebrate and honor the women in this house and in Cape Town, South Africa, and indeed Africa and the rest of the world, and thank them for the role they played in ensuring that we have a bright future. As men in this house and in this country, let us play an active role. We need to support and protect the women in our lives and communities at large. Speaker, I say this because too often we read stories of crime committed against women and children, and it's sad to see that as men we allow this sort of things to happen. Domestic violence and abuse against women has a direct impact on the lives and the future of our children. We not only destroy the women, but ultimately destroy the young ones, and we destroy our future. So in support of women in our society, I'd like to stand here and say, not in my name. In the words of Ankie Krog, Ma, ek skryf vir jou 'n gedig sonder fancy leestekens, sonder woorde wat rym, sonder bywoorde, net sommer 'n kaalvoet gedig. I'd like to add, moeders, ons stuur ons liefde sonder fancy voorbehoud, net ons kaalvoet liefde. Viva Aminana, vorentoe moeders, vorentoe, rise mothers, rise. I thank you.
Thank you. I see the ANC.
The ANC celebrates the victory of the applicants against the Western Cape Provincial Government regarding the sale of the Tafelberg property. For many years, domestic and other workers who rent in Sea Point have been saving up to take advantage of social housing within the CBD and Sea Point in particular. Instead of a clear strategy of land release of well-located provincial and municipal land for integrated housing, the DA has avoided doing this at all costs. Instead, they have cherry-picked a few prime pieces of state land for disposal to create an impression that they want to push back apartheid spatial legacies. Nothing, Madam Speaker, could be further from the truth. The DA promised us all an integrated housing strategy. She then misled the House, saying it had been done. Then she said MEC Madikizela was busy with it. Then we saw an advert calling for consultants to do it. It is now 2016, 2 years later, and we have no integrated plan using state land. There is not any political will. Simply put, the DA is actively opposed to provide social and affordable housing in the city. They are beholden to certain selected property developers. They are beholden to greed. They have, Madam Speaker, been captured. It's time for a broad coalition across party political lines and working with Reclaim the City and Dufunu Kwazi to come forward with plans not only to provide social and affordable housing on well-located state land and also private land, and not only in Tafelberg. You cannot bemoan the apartheid legacy in this, the most divided city in South Africa, and do nothing about changing this reality. As the ANC, we support the calling of an all-in conversation of social housing groups, property owners, PHP projects, backyard dwellers, Department of Public Works, and property to advance the campaign to integrate the city. We need all spheres of government, parastatals, private landowners to attend. And we must be guided by the need to provide well-located land for integrated human settlement. We must expose narrow agendas that put super profit ahead of basic needs. This is about confronting our past, being honest about our the inherited white privilege that it continues to exist. It is also, and I will conclude with this, I would like to make an appeal to those who offer to purchase Tafelberg. I'm appealing to them to please meet directly with Reclaim the City and the domestic workers and hear their pain. Let's move our country forward together. Starting in Tafelberg, there shall be houses, security and comfort for all.
Honourable Dugmore, Member Schaefer.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member just referred to the Premier as having misled the House. I believe that's unparliamentary and is casting aspersions on her character, which should be done by way of substantive motion.
Okay. I will peruse Hansard, Honourable Member, and I will revert with the ruling. At the same time, Honourable Dugmore, if I may address you, I've allowed you to present your member's statement, even though there is already a notice of motion appearing on the order paper as moved in the previous sitting, which then meant that I've allowed you to continue, but the matter is on the order paper to be discussed at the House, so the probability of it coming forward would have in effect meant I should have not allowed the statement to be made. I just thought I'd alert you to the guidelines around, once a motion is on the order paper, what the process is to be followed. Thank you.
Could I just address you on that? I think, Madam Speaker, in your absence, you would recall that I wrote to your office and was responded to by the Deputy Speaker requesting as a matter of urgent public importance and notwithstanding various interpretations of the sub judice rule, that in fact this House does debate the Tafelberg issue. You would recall, as I'm sure the Deputy Speaker referred to, that that was refused. I was not allowed. And although it does appear on the order paper, there doesn't appear any indication of a willingness of the programming authority led by the Chief Whip to allow this debate to happen, so respecting the sub judice rule. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, it will be scheduled for programming. As I said in my guidance, I can't give you an exact date. That would need to be agreed. Can we then, that is statements. The final statement is the DA.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, as a member of Parliament, a representative of our people, and a mother, I'm concerned that we are losing sight of the project of reconciliation. From hateful racism on social media platforms to incitements to violence that we hear from latecomer political parties. Why are South Africans choosing to talk themselves into chaos? Why are we volunteering to move away from reconciliation towards racial and political intolerances? Speaker, I don't think that we are taking seriously enough the threat that intolerance poses to our own safety and that of our children.
Order, please, members.
To be unwilling to work together in nation building because of racial or political differences is an instance of intolerance. It is a step towards hatred and towards violence, violence that destroys the public goods like infrastructure, violence that hurts and kills our youth. We are unwilling to listen to one another. We prejudge one another, but we refuse to listen to one another. We are depriving ourselves of diversity. It is
Order,
South
please.
Africa's greatest asset. We must reconnect.
Order. Honourable member, please take your seat. Honourable Mgaka, we have a member on the floor. If you'd afford the member the opportunity to present a statement. Honourable Mgaka, thank you. You may proceed, Honourable member.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm still saying we are unwilling to listen to one another. We prejudge one another, but we refuse to listen to one another. We are depriving ourselves of diversity. It is South Africa's greatest asset. We must reconnect ourselves with the ideas of unity in diversity. Each of us represents a story that weaves into a tapestry that is our nation. Why must we now unravel? The unraveling is taking shape in the form of this social issue, but they are in part due to the fact that our people are suffering without jobs. We must not lose sight of the need to develop our country. To do that, we must all work together. And I repeat, we must all work together, Member Magaka. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Mseko. That is the end of members' statements. Honourable Mgaka. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Can we get some order? We're now going to proceed with, we move to motions. Are there any motions where notice is given? I see the Honourable Lentert.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move a motion with notice that this House debate the opportunities and challenges of the environmental, economic and social impact of climate change in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Speaker. I move with notice that this House debates the role of arts and culture in shaping and addressing social inclusion in the Western Cape and in South Africa.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Speaker. I move notice of a motion. I move that the House debate the equitable share allocation to the Western Cape and the impact thereof to the residents. Thank you.
Notice taken. I see the Honourable Makaleni. No? Lekker. Sorry, my apologies. Honourable Lekker, you may
From the
proceed.
same clan, Speaker, there's nothing wrong. I move with notice that noting the DA's favorite neighborhood watch system had been infiltrated by extremist right-wing Landers elements in Vredendal, who terrorizes and assault local people of color. The House investigates the DA's role in protecting and harboring these racists in community structures.
Notice taken. Are there any more motions where notice is given? Honourable Mgaka.
Thank you, Speaker. That the House debates ongoing racism in the Western Cape after recent racist remarks made by Western Cape resident Matthew Tennyson.
Notice taken. Honourable Tianki.
The House calls for the suspension of the Eden District Municipality Senior DA Councillor, Tasha Siemers, who is investigated for allegedly forging a police letter.
Notice taken. Order. Are there any more? May order, please, members. There's a speaker on the floor, Honorable Gopi.
Motion with notice that the House investigate claims that the Ravensmead community reported to the city a number of times that the fence around the retention pound where 7-year-old Taylor Johan Jansen drowned was broken and posed danger to the children, but the city never responded. I thank
Notice taken. Any other motions? Okay, there are no further motions. We now, oh, sorry, Honourable Mugaka.
Thank you, Speaker. That the House debates the failure of the City of Cape Town to spend its budget allocation for housing in 2 consecutive years, while this municipality has a housing backlog of 400,000.
Notice taken. Honourable Gopi.
That the House debates negligence and poor service delivery in provincial hospitals.
Notice taken. Honourable Lecker. No, not. All right. That then concludes motions when notice is given. Can we now move to motions without notice? I see, I'm going to need assistance here. Honourable Makwasela, Joseph, and then Honourable Mitchell. That's the first 3, and then I'll move to the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that this House commends the police for the arrest of a man for kidnap and murder of a young girl, Annelisa Dulaze, who went missing on the 21st birthday, on her 21st birthday in January. Last week, her body was found in Makaza. It is her memorial service now as we're sitting here. I move that this House extends its condolences to the family, friends, and community of Makaza and hope that they can now find closure of her disappearance. May her beautiful soul rest in peace.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objection to the motion itself. It's agreed to. Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Speaker. I move motion without notice that the House extends its condolences to the family, the loved ones, friends and colleagues of Dean Smuts, who passed on. Dean Smuts was a DA member of the Parliament and editor of Fair Lady. At this House commend for the efforts that she helped to build a free and just open society in South Africa, a contribution towards a democratic country, and in particular, our Constitution must be recognized. May her soul rest in peace.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Mitchell, and then I will recognize Honourable Gopi, Honourable Buerta, and Matlodi, Honourable Maseko. Thank you. Next round. Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Speaker. A motion without notice that this House congratulates Kailicha psychology graduate and registered counsellor Panetsi Andreas Mpunga for offering mobile counselling clinic services aimed at destigmatizing mental illness to Kailicha residents. May reach his long-term goal to have a fleet of minibuses throughout the country where vulnerable youth can seek health service in a judgment-free space. I so move.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Gopi.
The House wishes all our hard-working nurses well on Nurses' Day today and thank them for the sterling job they are doing to look after the frail and the ill. I thank you.
Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Buerta.
Motion without notice that this House condemns the callous manner in which 2 brothers, learners at Monument Park High School in Kraaifontein, assaulted their principal, Mr. David Jantjies, in his office, resulting in him being hospitalized. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Speaker. I so move that DA sy medelee met die gesin, familie, vrienden en almal in Wellington deel met die ontijdige, sinnelose en wrede moord op die schrijver
Winnie Rust. En die woorden van Breitenbach. Bach was Winnie Rust, landelijke adel, elegant en diep gelovig. Zij was de dochter van C.P. van der Merwe, voormalige hoofd van de Wellingtonse opleidingsschool.
Order, please.
Broerskind van Boerneef en als schrijver en eierig. Winnie Rust was ook diep betrokken bij de Breer Wellingtonse gemeenschap. Haar ontijdige ingaan wordt diep beroemd.
Are there any objections? No objections. Members, that was diversity in terms of language. Let's appreciate diversity. I see the Honourable Ngaka.
Thank you. Motion without notice.
Order,
that
please,
the
members.
House,
There's a speaker on the floor.
that the House knows this year on Freedom Day, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of our glorious national constitution, which guides us and protects us all South Africans in a country where all enjoy dignity, equality, freedom, and human rights in a non-racial, non-sexist, unified, democratic, and open society. I thank you.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Tiana and then Honourable Inana.
Thank you, Speaker. Motion without notice that the House welcomes the handing over of the Beaufort West Youth Hub of 52 million by President Jacob Zuma on Tuesday, 10th May 2016, to develop skills and combating social ills in this rural area of the Central Karoo. I so move.
Are there any objections? There's an objection. There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Hinana, after which I see Member Ace, and then I see the Honourable Max. Honourable members, I need you to work with me, please. Let's try and keep the roster going. Honourable Hinana.
Deputy Speaker, motion without notice that this House congratulates the South African Police for the progress they have made in the matter of the 83-year-old grandmother Nomalizo Gutu in Nyanga and her 3 grandchildren, and for the 3-year-old man killed in Nyanga 2 weeks ago. In that, one suspect was arrested, so I move.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Ace. No? Honourable Max.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that this House extends its empathy with all the train passengers that have fallen victim to the series of violent protests that have plagued the rail transport system over the past few months. In addition, that this House also extends its gratitude to employers that have shown compassion with the workers who spend hours on the train between work, school, and home. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. Honourable Ace, are you ready? Not Ace, Dagmore, sorry.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that this House welcomes the decision by the SABC as initiated by the COO, Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng, that as of today, 90% of all music played on radio stations within their stable, which reach over 18 million listeners from all language groups, should be music produced by local artists, and urges all the station managers to consider including the following South African musicians, both well-known and not yet widely known for playtime: Don Laka, a.k.a. Brenda Fassie, Busi Mhlongo, Miriam Makeba, Brown Dash, Lebo Matosa, TK, Mashlatini and the Mahotelo Queens, Simpiwe Dana, Tandiswa Mazwai, Abdullah Ibrahim, Hugh Masekela, Jonathan Butler, Ricardo, Bayete, Sipe, not that
Order.
one, Sipo, Hotsticks Mabuse, Wendy Oldfield, Driman Skap, Lionel Bastos, Kyle Shepherd, The Weekender, Woodstock Live, Karen Korki, Oriel Hayes, Trudy Rushin, The Delft Big Band, Black Noise, Prophets of the City, Sakile, Elo April, Frank Pecco, Adamu, Good Luck, Tressa, Das Capital, that's for Mix and Blend, Los Tacos, Manny Walters, Dende and the Concrete Lions, DJ Invisible, Mshoza, Mendoza, Ringo Madlingozi, The Soil, John Secunjalo Pretorius, Johnny Clegg, Binyamin Kamruddin, Julian Wen, Elton Goslet, Jamie Jupiter, Saxit, Black Pearl, Jitsfinger, Andre Lotter, Tim Parr, Bright Blue, James Phillips, Corporal Punishment, Big Sky, Penguins in Bondage, The Psycho Reptiles, Falling Mirror, Ballyhoo, Rabbit, Zahara, Clout, Basil Kutsier, E-Void, Sketchy Bongo, Jimmy Nevis, The Awakening,
Order.
Jesse Clegg, Goldfish, The Helicopters, Watershed, Jimmy Dudlu, Corin Zoid, Opposite the Other, Tamaguini, Zama Jobe, Lira, Kelly Kumalo, Casper Nyoves, Mti, Zakwe, Duncan, K.O., Sylvia Mdunielwa, Gingelo Eto, Alex van Heerden, Zola,
Amen.
Sizwe Zakum, Zwakim Buli, Freshly Ground, Zahara, Sibungile Kumalo, Judas Sipuma, Zonke, Letambuli, Kaifa Samenya, Kai Licha, Vuyani Kali, Abiso Damba, Image, Ratex, Raizandile, DJ Ben Daza, Vui,
Okay. Honourable Dartmoor.
Dorothy
I think-
Masuku,
Honourable
Mafiki Zolo,
Dartmoor,
Google
Speaker,
Tenors,
please take your
Mikasa.
seat. Sorry, there's a point of
No, I
order.
think we
Is
must,
it a point
we must,
of order?
No, we're not objecting about the list. You can submit the list, but I think it's unnecessary. It's unfair that the speaker on the floor makes this motion in this context. I think it's deliberate and he's making fun of the people. It's not, must be serious.
Honourable Joseph, I've noted your point of order. Honourable Dartmoor, can I ask that the motion is noted and that we put the list be taken as read, that you provide the list to the table and we will consider the list as read. Thank
Speaker,
you.
could I just address you briefly?
Yes.
Yeah. Speaker, I will obviously abide by your ruling. I do have 159 names in all, but I just want to say that the reason why I felt particularly strongly about reading out these names was that earlier on today when the news broke, and many people know that at one stage was the MEC for Arts and Culture, and we started the Western Cape Musicians Association with Whitey Jacobs and others. And when they heard that I wanted to do a motion, they really felt that we should actually get these names because there's huge excitement in the country about this. But I respect that we have limited time, but I will formally give to one of the officers. And please, Honourable Speaker and members, if you have other names, I think we would all try and lobby for these names and get them played.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Maseko and then Honourable Buerta and then Honourable Gopi.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, yes.
I move without notice that this House congratulates Helen Zille, the Premier of the Western Cape, for being acknowledged as the third most admired person in South Africa by the global market research firm YouGov. I so move.
Okay, so it's not agreed to. Honourable Buerta.
Thank you,
Order, members, there's too much
Speaker.
noise. Can we settle down, please?
Thank you, Speaker. Motion
Honourable
without
Buerta.
notice that this House congratulates the nursing sister Hester Johnson of Cape Town for her 46 years of selfless caring and service excellence to the patients in the Western Cape. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. Honourable members, may I just go back? In the furor over the 159 names, I forgot to say, are there any objections to the motion? Let's just get this right. If there are no objections, then the motion is agreed to. Just on a technical point, I'd like to correct the situation. Thank you. I see Honourable Inanna and then Honourable Gopi. I'll just try and get everybody going. Thank you.
Speaker, the motion without notice that this House recommends the condemning by the Public Protector Thuli Madonsela this week of former Minister of Social Development Edna Molewa for instructing the department officials to organize food parcels at the ANC Youth League political rally event in Haynes Park in Philippi in 2009. Thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion? Are there objections to the motion? Yes. There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Diana and Honourable Lecker, and then I'll come back to Honourable Maseko and Honourable Mitchell. Honourable Magaka, you'll get the next round. Thank you. Honourable Diana, Honourable Gopi, you may proceed, and then the next two ladies behind you.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. A motion with notice that the House notes that Iris Bucus, 59 years, and her grandchild Tyler were humiliated at the Pick and Pay store in Mitchells Plain after Tyler allegedly broke a chocolate bar on Saturday, 22 April 2016. A security guard confronted them and a floor manager threatened to take them to jail. Condemns the store manager together with the security guard.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections agreed to. I see the Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Speaker. Motion without notice that the House commends National Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini for caring for the Beaufort West community and handed blankets at a recent visit to the elderly pensioners on the 29th April 2016, and further notes that the Provincial MEC Albert Fritz Pettili prohibited Western Cape Social Development staff to attend this official event and even threatened them with disciplinary action if they did. I so move.
Are there any objections? There is an objection. The motion will be printed. I see the Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much.
Order, please, members.
Speaker, I move that this House congratulates the 45 Slang Rafi residents who have received their title deeds from Mr. Bonginkosi Madikizela, Minister of Human Settlements. 12 of the recipients were elderly beneficiaries. Among them is a 72-year-old Miss Marie Hartnick, who was overjoyed to receive her title deed. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. I see the Honourable Mitchell.
Motie sonder kennisgewing dat die tragiese dood van Shane Visage, 'n graad 6 leerder aan die Woester Primêr, in 'n motorongeluk betreur. Ons innige meegevoel met sy geliefdes, familie en skoolvriende. Mag sy siel in vrede rus.
Thank you. Any objections? No objections. I see the Honourable Lecker, after which I see Honourable Wenger and Makwasela. Then I'll come back to the side. Thank you.
I move that the House commends the African National Congress Youth League in the Western Cape for its end racism in Rabbi Mess picket in front of SARU offices and Platekloof.
Are there any objections? There's objection. Motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Wenger.
Speaker, I move without notice that this House extends its deepest condolences and sympathy to the parents, family and friends of 6-year-old
Order,
Sandika
please.
Lippert, who died tragically in hospital after a stray bullet hit her in front of her grandmother's house in Bok Makiri on Tuesday, the 5th of May.
Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. I see the Honourable Makwasela.
Speaker, dat die huis, die tragische dood van Shane Visage, 'n graad 6 leerder aan Woester Premier en 'n motorongeluk betreur, ons innige meegevoel
Order,
met
please.
sy geliefdes,
Honourable
familie
Masasoli.
en
If you could take your seat, please. Thank you. There's a point of order.
The
Honourable
rule of the House,
Beerman.
Speaker, is that if a motion has been read, a similar one is not read. Two of the same people have read exactly the same motion.
Okay. Sorry? Okay.
It's not the same. It's not the Africans that you are used to. This is the real Africans.
Okay. Honourable Makwasela, it is the same subject matter. It might not
Okay.
be worded the
Le-
same, but it is the same subject matter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's only one speaker here. I'll listen to the speaker. Speaker, that this House extends its appreciation to the Mossel Bay Municipal Manager, Dr. Michelle Gratz, for the knowledge, expertise, and leadership quality that she brought to the municipality we saw clean audits in this municipality for 4 consecutive terms. We thank her for her excellent service, not only to the people of Mossel Bay, but also to the Western Cape and South Africa. We wish her and her family well going forward. I so move.
There's an objection. It will be written on the order paper. Honourable, where am I now? I think it's Honourable Magaka, and then Honourable Inana and Maseko. Let's just do rounds of 3.
Without notice that the House knows that the 16th Commission for Employment Equity report was released last month showing a bleak transformation picture for the Western Cape specifically, and that white were still leading top management level with 68.9%, while Africans were at 14.3%, and welcomes Labour Minister's 6 months ultimatum given to South African employers who do not meet the employment equity criteria to rectify the situation, hoping that the Western Cape Provincial Government will also rectify its situation.
Are there any objections? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Inana.
Speaker, the motion without notice that this House commemorates May as Africa Month and celebrate ideas and culture exchange under the theme Building a Better Africa and a Better World, aimed at promoting unity and regional integration for the continent's development and advancement.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm also having that this House extends its condolences to the family, friends, and community of Ashton with the passing of Ezed Dikoker after a short illness. Ezed was a woman who believed in giving selflessly to the extended community. May her soul rest in peace.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Joseph. You may proceed.
Speaker. I move without notice that this House congratulates Dr. Wright, a University of Western Cape PhD graduate, for being nominated as one of the top finalists for the most innovative project on the African Continent Award. I so move. Thank you.
Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Magaka, I see Honourable Max and Honourable Maseko. Member Diana, I'll come to you with the next round.
I move this motion without notice that the House notes the recent Statistics South Africa report revealed the number of people living in formal settlement increased from 76% in 2002 to 80% in 2014, and that the second highest number of these was in the Western Cape with a 521,000 housing backlog. Of these, 400,000 are registered in the city of Cape Town, where its Human Settlement Department has not used 58% of its capital budget at this stage, and calls on the national government to intervene urgently to resolve the quagmire.
Are there any objections? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Max.
Thank you, Speaker. The House acknowledges the courageous bravery of Darren August, who unselfishly helped a pregnant lady on the train whilst in the process and fell victim to robbers and was pushed off the train. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that this House congratulate Bongikosi Madikizela, Minister of Human Settlements, on the launching of Bella Housing Project tomorrow. When completed, this 1.3 billion project will house 629 rental accommodation units. 192 units are for those who earn less than 3,500 per month, and 437 units will be allocated to the beneficiaries who earn less than 7,500 per month. I so move.
Are there any motions? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Order, order, please, members. Honourable Diana, and then Olivier.
Thank you, Speaker. Motion without notice that the House welcomes the launch by National Minister Nomvula Mokonyane of the Worcester Bulk Water Supply Project of 100 million rand that will provide water to 180,000 people. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Olivier.
Speaker, I move that this House condemns with contempt the destruction of public property and vandalism witnessed during the recent protests across the country, such as Fuani, Tenun, and Grabouw. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Lentet and then Honourable Dagmore and Honourable Max.
Motie sonder kennisgewing, ek move dat die huis Rhino Tees van die plaas Mount Vernon in Klapmuts erkenning gee vir hul bydrae van R750,000 aan erebewaarders om die stryd teen stroopers beter toegerus voor te sit en by te dra tot die bewaring van renosters.
Any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Dagmore, then Honourable Max, and then I'll come to you, Honourable Chacham.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that this House, noting that charges of crimen injuria have been laid against a sitting DA councillor from the Hesoko municipality and who is also the top candidate on the DA's candidate list for the 2016 local elections, Anna-Marie Joubert, who is alleged to have said, "Ek is nou klaar met die," and she used the K word allegedly, after a community meeting in Riversdale, therefore calls on the DA leadership and the Speaker to immediately suspend Councillor Joubert pending the conclusion of the case against her, case number CAS 64/5/2016, registered at the Riversdale South African Police Services on the 5th of May 2016, and further calls on the Human Rights Commission to urgently investigate the complaint that has been laid.
Are there any objections? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Max.
Dankie, Speaker.
Order, please.
Ek dryf dat die motie sonder kennisgewing dat die huis die Suid-Afrikaanse span wat vanjaar in die Pan-Afrikaanse Wiskunde Olimpiade PAMO gewen het, gelukwens. Altesaam 45 hoërskoolleerlinge van 8 Afrika lande het deelgeneem. 5 van die 6 SA deelnemers is Wes-Kaapenaars en goue medalje wenner. Sangoon Lee is vir die tweede 18 volgende jaar as die koningin van wiskunde aangewys. Sy is ook die algehele wenner van die kompetisie. Ander Wes-Kaapse deelnemers was Ralph McDougall, goud, Timothy Slengsinger, silwer, Hannah Clinton, silwer, en Rosina Abadi, brons. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Chacham.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House welcomes the decision by the Minister Mike Masuta to put on leave Judge Mabel Johnson following her racially loaded comments on social media, which caused outrage amongst members of the public. I move.
Any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Schaefer.
Thanks, Speaker. That this House congratulates all the 10 entrepreneurs allocated to the kiosks along the Provincial Parliament buildings in Long Street and wishes them success in their endeavours.
Any objections? No objections, agreed to. Honourable Schaefer.
Thank you. Motie sonder kennisgewing dat die Huisgraan SA se NAMPO gelukwens met hul 50-jarige bestaan en bedank vir die wêreldformaatdiens wat hulle aan graanverbouers van Suid-Afrika bied. Die eerste uitstalling het 8 deelnemers gehad en 203 mense het dit bygewoon. Vandag spog NAMPO met 650 uitstallers en bykans 70,000 besoekers word geakkommodeer.
Dankie. Any objections? No objections, agreed to. Chief Whip.
That the House expresses its appreciation to the Ward Councillor, the Risk Reduction Unit, Neighbourhood Watchers, clergy, business representatives and community representatives for their efforts to prevent the ongoing violence in Maziphumelele and Fish Hoek.
Any objections? No objections, agreed to. I see the Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without motion without notice that this House congratulates and wishes the 2 young cyclists, Dula Sizwe, Mklenge from Kailicha, and Marco Egerens from Belha. Everything of the best. Earlier this year, the two were selected from a group of 12 when they participated in the Cape cycle tour in Franschhoek by the Hot Chili Development Rider Program. They will be going to Switzerland for a month's intensive training before going to London to complete in the London Paris Cycle Challenge in July. I'm also.
Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
Motie sonder kennisgewing dat die Huis die Universiteit van Wes-Kaapland se vroue strand vlugbalspan gelukwens met hulle oorwinning oor die span van die Tegniese Universiteit van Pretoria tydens die week se varsity reeks wat by die Universiteit van Wes-Kaapland in Bellville gehou is.
Baie dankie. Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
Motie sonder kennisgewing dat die Huis Richard Stander van Atletiek Boland gelukwens met sy aanstelling as waarnemende uitvoerende hoof van Atletiek Suid-Afrika.
Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
I move with motion without notice that this House congratulate the Bellville golfer Gerlo Roux on retaining the South African Mid-Amateur Stroke Play Championships earlier this week in Pretoria. I move so.
Any objection? Honourable Yankee. No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
Motion without notice that this House wishes the schools well that will be participating in the Art School High School Drama Mini Festival scheduled from May the 22nd to the 30th. I move so.
Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Masazoli.
Speaker, I move that this House notes that on Sunday, the 16th of May, 2016, will be exactly a year since the passing of Mr. Christopher Fox, a proud Cape Townian, a businessman, a philanthropist, and a member of the Cape Town Club. He was loved by many and lived a great life. That this House wishes his family, his wife, Michelle, his son, Daniel, and friends strength during this period. May his soul rest in peace.
Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I see the Honourable Mackenzie.
Speaker, motie sonder kennisgewing dat die Huis sy medelee betuig met die gesin, familie en vriende van die 30-jarige Nicole Serenj van Constitution Hof in Lavender Hill wat op Saterdag 7de Mei tydens 'n bendeskietery haar lewe tragies verloor het. Hierdie onnodige geweld laat nog 3 minderjarige kinders wees. Dankie.
Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Any more? Honourable members. Honourable Mackenzie. I take it you're finishing up now.
Kennisgewing dat die Huis Mike Horn die Suid-Afrikaanse gebore avontuur voorspoed toewens op sy seetog sonder gemotoriseerde vervoermiddel van Monaco na Antarctica en dan oor die Stille Oseaan na die Noordpool sal reis. Hy het op Saterdag 8 Mei op die pole-to-pole ekspedisie vertrek en beoog om teen Junie in Suid-Afrika aan te kom.
Baie dankie. If there are no objections, agreed to. Okay, that then concludes. Have you got one more? Yeah, okay, laat hem maar nou aangaan. I recognize the Honourable Mackenzie.
That this House welcomed the Olympic torch. We will be lit in Kleinmond, Overberg this weekend and will move across the Western Cape Province as a symbol of the Olympic spirit and the values for which the Olympics stand. The joy of effort, fair play, respect for others, the pursuit of excellence, and the balance between body, will, and mind. I move so.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. If there are no more motions without notice, we will now move to the draft resolution. The next item on the order paper is the draft resolution in the name of the Honourable M.M. Wenger. I see the Honourable Wenger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Have you ever been at sea in a dense fog, when it seemed as if a tangible white darkness shut you in, and the great ship, tense and anxious, groped her way toward the shore with plummet and sounding line, and you waited with beating
Order,
heart.
please, members.
And you waited with beating heart for something to happen. I was like that ship before my education began, only I was without compass or sounding line, and no way of knowing how near the harbor was. Light, give me light, was the wordless cry of my soul, and the light of love shone on me in that very hour. Helen Keller wrote these profound words about the importance of education. As our late President Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Madam Speaker, there is no doubt about the importance of educating our young citizens. It is essential for the development of our society and fundamental for the development of young minds. We owe it to our children to provide them with good quality education, and this can only be achieved if we are able to provide safe learning environments at school and on the way to school. I therefore rise to debate a draft resolution I have put forward in this House, because our education system is at risk. It is at risk because we have an under-resourced police service in the Western Cape, and this fact is having a negative impact on learner safety. Speaker, when schools in distress or under threat call their local stations for assistance, the police response is oftentimes poor or none at all. Our most valuable asset, our children and our future, can and must be our priority, and so too should their safety be the police's priority. We know that when the police and the Western Cape Education Department partnered in 2013 in Hanover Park, and where SAPS increased visible policing around a school and created safe corridors for learners to get to and from school, learners were remarkably safer and the number of incidents decreased dramatically. This means that with proper visible policing and police response, in conjunction with the Education Department and other role players, our children can be safer. We need to continue this partnership and expand it to all vulnerable schools. But where it fails is when we don't have the proper response from the police. The numbers show unequivocally that the Western Cape is simply not getting the levels of police resources that it ought to. The Constitution clearly sets out the mandate of the South African Police Service. Section 205 states that the objects of the South African Police Service are to prevent, combat, and investigate crime, to maintain public order, to protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, and to uphold and enforce the law. We have over 2,000 vacancies in the Western Cape Police. We have 14% less detectives than what we should have. And in visible policing, which is a crime prevention mechanism, there are over 2,000 less officers patrolling our communities than what we should have. Should all the granted posts be filled, it would mean approximately 20 additional officers on the ground for every station in this province, of which 4 would be detectives. The lack of officers is compounded by the number of officers that leave the service each year, totaling just over 1,000 in the 3 previous financial years. This is compounded by the fact that the national budget for the next 3 years only makes provision for 20 additional police posts. Yes, our nation will only get 20 additional police officers between now and 2019. On average, that is less than 1 additional officer per province per year, less than 1. A national police budget of 80 billion rand cannot even provide for more officers to make our communities and school learners safe. But the national budget can somehow find 4 billion rand for a luxury jet for the president. Speaker, these priorities are completely skewed and must be reviewed. Safety for all should be a priority and not luxury air travel for a few. Why can't the president fly on SAA? Speaker, it is clear that we must urgently fill the thousands of vacancies in our province. We must resource our police and ensure that they have the tools needed to fulfill their constitutional mandate of protecting our school children and our communities. I therefore urge the House to support this resolution so that the Provincial Police Commissioner can be requested to submit a report to the Standing Committee on Community Safety on how the police will be adequately resourced and by when, to ensure that all vacancies are filled as a matter of urgency, to prioritize school safety, and to ensure that visible policing is fully implemented and increased, and in particular around our schools. The tragedy is that these requests we are making should be the norm. We shouldn't have to beg government for the basics and a basic level of policing. I thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Lecker.
Enkosi Somlo. When Honorable Wenger wants subs to report to the House on how subs will adequately be resourced and fill all vacancies so that school safety is prioritized and to implement visible policing around schools. Perhaps we should be asking this DA-led provincial government what happened to the integrated school strategy safety that was developed by the ANC in 2003. It is because of this government's narrow politics that they dismantled it, because it dealt with the involvement of CPFs at schools, which are a direct link to the community. It dealt with the skewed distribution of budget and programs of this DA-led government. I will be failing if I do not mention the infrastructural problems, including the toilets, which all contribute to the ability of subs to properly, effectively, and speedily police these areas. We're not suffering from amnesia. Even an ordinary person from the street can see that the Western Cape provincial government has failed to ensure safety for its citizens, and instead it is looking for a scapegoat, and SAPS is unfortunately becoming its punching bag. Go out there and tell the people that you have broken the morale of good police officers, who most of them are working hard and honest. Stop bringing politics where they don't belong. The DA must also confess that it has fostered mistrust of subs by members of the community through its continued reckless remarks, and the deaths of many in the subs is as a result of your loose utterances. Section 12 of the Subs Act, Act 68 of
Honourable
1995.
Lecker, can you please take your seat, Chief Opali?
Speaker, can the honourable member indicate whether she's implying that the deaths are a result of any members of this House?
Honourable member, you should be asking if the member would take a question, Chief Whip. Do you take a question?
No,
No, the member won't take a question.
Section 12 of the Subs Act, Act 68 of 1995, stipulates that the Provincial Commissioner has the responsibility to determine the distribution of the strength of subs under his jurisdiction among different areas, station areas, offices, and units. The Western Cape staff establishment is 22,055. The actual number at the moment is 21,097, and the surplus is 958. In fact, we are rating third in terms of the number of subs members allocated all throughout the provinces. I want to state that honourable member is disingenuous and opportunistic. Besides, she is not telling the Western Cape that since the ANC came into power in 1994, the metro alone.
Honourable Lecker, will you please take your seat, members? You cannot engage in a finger-pointing exercise while there's a speaker on the floor. I'm going to ask both sides of the House to manage yourselves. Thank you. Guys, honourable members, please, you may proceed, Honourable Lecker.
Like any other provinces. She goes on to argue that the police response at school during gang violence is poor or none at all. Where is the rogue Metro Police in this debacle? Have they now become a specialized unit that only jump to protect the DA executives when they campaign in the townships? Metro Police remains untouchable entity to this provincial government because it is under the control of a politician who is busy ticking the boxes as and when SAPS perform its duties. hence it is not coming to the plate, and this provincial government is quiet about it. Speaker, violence in schools must be viewed as a symptom of our socio-economic problems, of squalor and moral degradation. Crime and violence is exacerbated by high unemployment, poverty, and social deprivation, including the availability of drugs and alcohol. Unemployment and poor living conditions lead to antisocial behavior because of having no sense of belonging. Thus, some have a low self-esteem, poor academic performance, learning difficulties, which in the end results in incident of school dropouts. Becoming a member of a gang therefore fills the space of these youngsters because they feel wanted, safe, and taken care of. Needy families are drawn by promises of food, money, and rent. People are paying money for protection under the false pretense for security, while young girls are targeted and offer free lifts to and from school by gangsters in return that they are introduced to drugs and prostitution. The recent upsurge in gang violence and deaths on the Cape Flats under the watch of this DA administration and the city of Cape Town that is incapable and simply unwilling to end the mayhem that has resulted in several unnecessary deaths of innocent school children. It is clear that the police alone cannot be held accountable in ensuring gang violence when this DA lacks the political will to address chronic service delivery failures all over the Cape Flats. Religious groups are supposed to publicly appeal against gangsters, but instead, this DA-led provincial government is giving out money to religious groups to arrange food parcels for the day, or rather run a feeding scheme. Oh yes, there is a safe school call center. Supposedly traumatized learners and educators must be referred to either a psychologist or a social worker. But truth be told, there is only 58 overworked social workers available for schools. Only one for 58 schools. All those affected had to be put on a waiting list and their cases will be prioritized. The Department of Education brags about installing alarm systems, but this is only put in administration block and none of the classrooms have an alarm or emergency button and leads to most classrooms being vandalized. Your typical example will be Lubulumko High School. Car hijackings are the order of the day. Walter Teka in Nyanga is one of those, where a department official was almost hijacked and the person almost or narrowly escaped. And what is this DA-led Department of Education's counter strategy on school grounds? Because they continue breaking, but none is done. Let's stop demoralizing the subs and have an integrated safety strategy. I thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this draft resolution could not have come at a better time. Section 12 of the Constitution in the Bill of Rights provides that everyone has the right to freedom and security of the person, which includes the right to be free from all forms of violence from either public or private sources. Section 205, as my colleague touched on, sets out the responsibilities of the National Police Service, our SAPS. Subsection 1 provides that SAPS must be structured firstly to function in the national, provincial, and where appropriate, local spheres of government. Subsection 3 sets out the objects of the SAPS, which are to prevent, note, the objects of the SAPS, prevent, combat, and investigate crime, to maintain public order, to protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, and to uphold and enforce the law. It is no secret that in the Western Cape we are faced with the scourge of gangsterism, which has been plaguing some of our communities for decades. Unfortunately, in communities where gangsterism is prominent, it can and does spill over into our schools. In 2008, the then ANC-led Western Cape government brought out a gang strategy, which they love to say we are not implementing because it was an ANC idea. The reality is, though, that we are in fact implementing a large part of it. The other reality is that the strategy extended far beyond the mandate of provincial government into the areas of SAPS, justice and correctional services, over which we have no control, nor do they, but the ANC has a little issue with separation of power. This issue is a complex one that requires a multi-pronged, multi-stakeholder solution. This is clearly highlighted in the 2008 strategy as well. So we are not saying for a minute that SAPS is the only party responsible. However, they play a crucial role in addressing the criminal manifestations of gangsterism, along with correctional services, the NPA, and the Department of Justice. Where the police are present, the gangs are not. I want to make it clear that we receive very good cooperation from the SAPS in many places in the Western Cape, from officers who are doing their utmost under very difficult circumstances. But they are severely constrained, because firstly, they are under-resourced, and quite frankly, in some cases, they are just downright ineffective. This morning, we arranged with SAPS to conduct a search and seizure operation at Fazeka Senior Secondary School in Guguletu. The School Safety Committee requested their intervention as a result of learners being seriously threatened by other learners, where there are two competing gangs. This is simply unacceptable when schools should be a safe haven for education to take place. Our Safe Schools confirmed this morning that the planned operation was going ahead as scheduled at 11:30. By 11:40, there were a few officers on site, but no dogs as promised. It soon appeared that they were totally unprepared for the operation. They then advised that there had been a miscommunication and that they were not prepared. Fortunately, the acting station commander assisted in quickly organizing officers, but after an hour, the promised sniffer dogs, which were in the area, had still not materialized. They then proceeded with a search, whereupon it became quite evident that they had no clue whatsoever about the proper procedure to be followed in these operations. Regardless of the resource constraints, ignorance of basic procedures is just plain unacceptable. If this is how they conduct an operation planned in consultation with the Office of the MEC for Education, no wonder we have so many problems with crime. It is also true that there are far too many cases where the SAPS is simply unable to assist. We receive many such complaints, but two examples are, at Allo Secondary on the 9th of March 2015, the secretary reported that a learner was stabbed at 7:20 on the school premises. The school contacted SAPS and was informed that the police only has one van, so they were unable to say when they would be able to respond. By 10:30, SAPS had still not responded. A year later, on the 10th of March 2016, at Bishop's School of Skills, the principal reported that he had received a threat that gangsters would be coming to the school as a result of an incident in the community the previous day. The school contacted SAPS to request support patrols and were informed that the vans were attending shootings in Bonteheuwel, and therefore they couldn't have any assistance because there were no people to come and assist. Last month, after a learner from Rotterdam High School was stabbed on the school premises, I was so angered that I requested an urgent meeting with the Western Cape Police Commissioner General Jula to discuss how they plan to comply with their constitutional duty to keep our learners safe, especially in the light of his stated commitment to address the gang problem in the Western Cape. Today is exactly 1 month since I requested this meeting, but I still do not have a confirmed date. I also issued a press statement on the issue. Shortly thereafter, General Jula himself publicly admitted that the Western Cape is the most under-resourced province in South Africa, Honourable Lecker. You must read the newspapers, with 85% of our stations being understaffed. This could be as a result of the 2,392 posts that have simply not been filled. As my colleague also said, if these posts were filled, every station would have an additional 20 police officers on the ground, of which 4 would be detectives. The under-resourcing often occurs in high-risk areas, which exacerbates the problem even further. The inability of SAPS to support at critical times is a great concern, as it leaves our learners and educators vulnerable and at the mercy of invading gangsters. It also puts inordinate pressure on the other spheres of government and government departments to step in where they should not have to. We do everything possible in education to ensure the safety of our learners while they are on the school premises. Our Safe Schools Directorate has behavioural interventions, holiday programs, and infrastructure interventions. The Western Cape government as a whole has many interventions for youth at risk, and we are partnering with the Metro Police and law enforcement of the City of Cape Town, the only people who really do consistently respond well, with the school resource officers and the stabilisation unit. Our game changers also are very much focused on the youth, especially after schools. Because of the security measures that the WCD has put in place in schools, schools are very often places of refuge when gang violence takes place in the community. When gang violence flared up in Hanover Park and Mannenberg, many learners reported that they felt safer at school than they did at home. But we cannot protect our learners on their way to and from school, and it is not the job of teachers and principals to fight off gangsters in the school. It is quite clear that unless each role player takes their role seriously and properly complies with their responsibilities, no strategy will ever make a difference in combating gangsterism and violence in our schools. So let's analyze the requirements of Section 205 of the Constitution again. It is quite evident that SAPS is not structured to function at a provincial or local level in the Western Cape, as there are simply not enough people to effectively deal with the issues at hand, nor is the training remotely adequate. From the school context alone, it is evident that SAPS is not making any major inroads in preventing, combating, and investigating crime, and that they are failing dismally in protecting and securing our learners, not because they do not want to in many cases, but because they simply do not have sufficient resources, both human and physical. Plainly and simply, it is more than evident that Minister Nhleko and the national government are in yet another crucial respect in breach of the South African Constitution, and the cost is the safety and sometimes lives of our people in general and our learners in particular. From my experience this morning, I have seen firsthand the disarray of the SAPS and their complete unpreparedness to deal with these serious issues. The police need to be resourced and properly trained to deal with these very serious issues in communities like Gugulethu. Madam Speaker, I would like to propose an amendment to the draft resolution that the third bullet be amended to say that school safety is prioritised and proper training given to all SAPS members in the Western Cape in search and seizure procedures as a matter of urgency. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Order, members. Honourable Shafie, if you could submit the amendment as you have it recorded. Thank you. We now see the Honourable Christians.
Speaker, under-resourcing of SAPS in the Western Cape is a major concern at our schools. Although safety is SAPS's primary responsibility, we need a approach from all spheres of government. But, Speaker, the biggest problem that children have in the townships is getting to school and getting from school. And that is the responsibility of SAPS. Children stay at home because they don't feel safe going to school. And like the minister said, in the corridors of the school, they are safer than on their way to school. So I've just been at the school the other day, a speaker in Delft, and a learner said to me that you can get access to any drugs at school. Any drugs. And that is the problem. And he told me that they are recruited on school now already to join gangs. And gangs is now seen as a profession. Speaker, the important thing is we as a committee over and over again said that we are under-resourced in the Western Cape, and those positions are critical and must be filled. I thank you.
Thank you. The absence of Honourable Joseph, I see the Honourable Wenger. Order, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In response to some of the speakers, the morale of police officers, the thing that is breaking the morale of police officers is the fact that national government is not giving police enough resources to do their work efficiently and effectively. Police killings are ruthless and unconscionable, and we have to make every effort to protect our officers. And in order to do that, we need two things. The first is we need to properly resource our police, and secondly, we need to build trust. A 2011 research paper by the ISS on how to stop
Order,
police
please,
killings
members.
included the need to stop police brutalities in South Africa. They noted that using more force in their action with criminal suspects is unlikely to improve officer safety. It said it will play into systemic police brutality, which will cause civilians to become fearful and less cooperative with the police. And therefore, it's very important that we also focus on the issue of building trust between communities and police. The problem with the deployment of police is that the provincial commissioners' hands are often tied, and the Commissioner is not able to determine the resources because the theoretical human resource formula is what produces the allocation of officers. So what the result is, and that was one of the major findings of the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry, is that those areas that have high crime levels and which need the most number of police officers are those that receive the least number of police officers. So the allocation of police resources is completely skewed. Another instance of where the SAPS Act should empower the police commissioner but doesn't is on the specialized police units. When the Western Cape government took up the issue of reintroducing specialized police units, with the commissioner, the then commissioner, it became a political football. He referred us to the national minister referred us back to the provincial commissioner referred us back to the national minister, and it took years and years of lobbying before the specialized units were eventually or are going to be re-established. On the issue of new police stations, they don't address the problem of resourcing because what happens is that they rob Peter to pay Paul. Let's look at, for example, the Lentegeur police station, Honorable Lecker. We can wax lyrical about new stations, but new stations don't mean more officers. When Lentegeur police station was opened in 2013, it only received a net total of 10 new police officers, and the rest were redeployed from Mitchell's Plain. In fact, let me just find my notes. It's concerning that under the circumstances of high levels of crime and violence, Mitchell's Plain lost 20% of its police officers to Lentegeur. 126 were transferred from Mitchell's Plain to Lentegeur when it opened, and a further 28 were transferred to Lentegeur from elsewhere. And a net total of only 10 new posts were created for the new station, which means that between the two new stations, the area only received 10 extra officers. And furthermore, Mitchell's Plain was not on the list to receive any of the new 668 entry-level posts that were recently being recruited. Perhaps Honourable Lecker would like to tell the House why the police recruited 6,299 new officers during the ANC's term of office in the Western Cape, but only 2,300 during the DA's term of office. And if Honourable Lecker thinks that we have enough police officers, I would urge her to tell that to the residents of Nyanga, where just last week the CPF marched to the police station because they don't have enough officers. I would urge her to tell that to the family of Warrant Officer Brits in Klapmuts, who was the only police officer on duty that night, and because he was the only police officer on duty, criminals came in and murdered him. He was murdered. And this is the most brutal illustration of how proper resourcing is important for not only protecting our communities, but our police officers themselves. I urge her to tell the same to the people of Khayelitsha, who have less than one officer for every 700 residents. I ask her to tell that to the people of Toes River, where on a weekend there's only one police officer on duty on the weekend for the whole station. I ask her to tell that to the residents of Lavender Hill or Steenberg, which only has enough officers to police half of the sectors. Of the 4 sectors, only 2 can be patrolled because they don't have enough officers. And which is the sector that doesn't get patrolled? Lavender Hill, the one that needs it the most. So it's quite clear, Madam Speaker, that we need more police resources, and the vacancies need to be filled as a matter of urgency, not only for our communities, but importantly for our school learners.
Thank you, Honourable Wenger. That concludes the debate. Order, please, Honourable Lecker. The question, sorry. Yes.
Speaker, that I was hoping that you would intervene and stop Chief Whip Wiley for breaking the line after he came late. Please.
Order, please, members. Okay. Order, please, members. I'm not going to make a ruling on that because I can't say that I was privy to what happened. But we now move to the question before the House. Is honourable members. that the motion printed in the name of the Honourable Wenger on the order paper, upon which an amendment has been moved by the Honourable Member Schaefer. In Member Schaefer's presentation, she put forward an amendment, and if I could read that amendment before I put it as it is proposed. The amendment says, let's just calm down, please. That the third bullet will be amended as follows, that school safety is prioritized and proper training given to all SAPS members in the Western Cape in search and seizure procedures as a matter of urgency. That was the amendment that has been put before the House. I now need to put the amendment as proposed. I need to ask those in favour of the amendment will say aye. Aye. And those against will say nay. I think the ayes have it. Okay. I think the ayes have it. I now put the motion as amended. What's wrong, Honourable Judge? Are you okay? Are there any objections? Okay, there is an objection. Okay, so, sorry, honourable members, the question was there were ayes and nays. The ayes had it, and I now have to put the draft resolution as amended. Okay. So we have the draft resolution, and the question I need to ask, are there any objections? There is an objection. And now, Mr. Nahi. I now put the question. Those in favour of the amended resolution? That's the question. Those in favour of the amended resolution? Yes. That's... And those who are not in favour, obviously. Yeah. Okay. Honourable Olivier, sorry, that concludes the process, unfortunately. We've been through a process of ayes and nays and yes and no's, and we now have an amended resolution. So we will now move to the order of the day. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill, NCOP, ratification of the final mandate.
When the House could not sit these past few days, the Legislature received the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP to support this bill. This mandate was then sent to the NCOP. Are there any objections to the ratification of the conferment of authority on the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP to support the bill? No objections? Agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works on the Expropriation Bill, NCOP, ratification of final mandate.
Order. When the House could not sit the past few days, the Legislature received the report of the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works on the Expropriation Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP not to support this bill. This mandate was then sent to the NCOP. I will now afford parties an opportunity to make a declaration if they so wish. I see the Honourable Max.
Honourable Speaker,
There's no declaration.
the Standing Committee on Public Works in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, of which I am the chairperson, has conducted several public hearings with the opportunity for the public to do written and oral submissions. Based on these submissions, the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works in the Western Cape proposed amendments to the bill to be negotiated in the NCOP Select Committee on Economic and Business Development. Because the committee failed to take into consideration any of the amendments, the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works in the Western Cape could not support the expropriation bill as is. Some of the issues, among others, the Standing Committee found was with definitions, the term legal disability, property, the definition of expropriation is as wide as God's grace. Speaker, appropriation is an extreme intervention into property rights and can prohibit investments to South Africa. It can have cataclysmic consequences for economic growth. We are disappointed with the decision not to take our proposed amendments into consideration and fear it will hurt our economy, which will prevent people from accessing jobs. Speaker, it would be wrong for anyone to infer that the Democratic Alliance is against appropriation. Appropriation is enshrined in the Constitution of South Africa. All we say as the Democratic Alliance, it have to conform with the principles of the Constitution. I so move. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Dugmore, you were not in the House. I did call for parties to make a declaration. If you wish to make a declaration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
Madam Speaker, our country has made progress since 1994, and having put in place democratic institutions and provided basic services to millions of our people, the second phase of our transition must be all about economic and social transformation. We need ownership of this economy by the black majority, African, coloured and Indian. We need faster growth and we need land redistribution. This bill provides exactly this opportunity and it brings direct alignment with the Constitution. The DA's decision to oppose this bill is disgraceful, anti-transformation, and a naked attempt to uphold what can only be described as white privilege. Every concern, Madam Speaker, every concern raised at the public meetings and by the members of the DA were comprehensively dealt with by the officials of the National Department of Public Works. It is clear that the DA is determined to delay transformation in court. This is the DA of Helen Zille and Mark Wiley. It is not the DA. It is not, Madam Speaker.
Order, please.
It
Sorry,
is not
Honourable
the DA.
Dugmore, if you could take your seat.
It is not the DA.
If you could take your seat, please. There's a point of order. Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Speaker. The names referred to by the honourable member, these individuals are honourable members.
Sorry. Honourable Dugmore, if you could refer to the members as honourable in your address, please. Thank you.
Okay. This is the DA of the Honourable Zille and the Honourable Mark Wiley. It is not the DA of the Honourable Alan Winde. It is not the DA of the Honourable Leonard Max. It is not the DA of Honourable Mkasela. They know what their party is doing is wrong. You will be remembered. You will be remembered in history. And Honourable Speaker, the
Order,
members,
please, members.
the members of the
Sorry,
DA.
Honourable Dugmore, please take your seat. Honourable Masazoli. Sorry, no. Honourable Makwasala is raised on a point of order. Yes, no, I understand.
Not in his seat.
Thank you. Honourable Makwasala, if you want to raise on a point of order, you need to be in your proper seat in the House.
Thank you. I was guided accordingly. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to ask a member a question. Will you take a question, sir?
Okay. Honourable Dugmore, will you take a question from the member? Okay, the member will not take, the honourable member will not take a question.
He's scared.
You may proceed.
Madam Speaker, these honourable members should not be surprised that you will fail to grow the base of the DA beyond the glass ceiling, which your retired leader Helen Zille managed to bring you to using a dose of swart gevaar and scare tactics. I, Madam Speaker, hereby call on the voters of our country and the voters of the Western Cape to punish this party of privilege, of anti-transformation, of unashamed protection of minority wealth, the party which some are beginning to say is the party of 1%. I thank you.
Thank you. The ACDP, would you like to submit? No further reports. Okay. Honourable members, can we get order, please?
I wasn't there.
Can we get order, please? I would like to now pose the question. Are there any objections to the ratification of the conferment of authority on the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP not to support the appropriation bill? Okay. I would like to add expropriation bill. I would like to add that the ANC's objection will be noted. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.